Good evening and welcome to yet another episode of AFC East Bros. Kyle and Gary here talking all things in the AFC East as we do every single week. And Gary, shoot, man, we're eating our words right now. Those Miami Dolphins, they are in the playoffs. No, it's not a win and they're in type of deal. It's not that they need to get some help week 17. No, they are in. Their ticket has already been punched. They're in it. There was no December collapse as we were predicting, Gary. And boy, oh boy, were we getting on the Dolphins fans' nerves last week. People are getting on us. Oh, we're going to show you haters. We're going to prove you guys wrong. Someone tweeted at me last night. He was respectful, but he's like, I can't believe that I'm listening to a podcast where a Jets fan and a Bills fan are trying to fairly critique my team. So we certainly rubbed them the wrong way last week, Gary, but you know what? We're eating our words right now. There was no December collapse. And let's just say this. I'll go ahead and say it, Gary. I don't know if you will, but congrats, Miami Dolphins fans. I sincerely mean that. Congrats. I didn't want to see you make it, but you made it. And I'm not a sore loser. I was raised when I was younger to shake your opponent's hand after you lose and say good game. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I was raised in that same household, Kyle, and I got to say, congratulations to the Miami Dolphins, man. Kudos. Ugly start, excellent finish, storybook finish. And can we say it right now, Adam Gase, Coach of the Year? I mean, can we say that right now? Can we crown him? He's got my vote. And, I wouldn't go as far as to putting a baseball cap of a Miami Dolphins on my head and saying I'm going to root for them in the playoffs. But I guarantee you this right now, I will definitely be cheering for the Miami Dolphins, especially if they run into the evil empire, which is the New England Patriots. But other than that, go ahead.
To your point about that, I mean, I'm not going to root for them if they're playing anyone else. But if they're playing the Patriots, I don't know who I'd root for. Part of me just says, well, who cares if the Patriots win another one? We already know they're great. We don't want the Miami Dolphins to also be great, and then we're still at the bottom of the basement in the AFC East.
Kyle, one thing that Bills game taught us last week is, and I was so happy because I got all these tweets from Dolphins fans. And prior to that week leading up to the Bills game, when you and I were very highly critical of Matt Moore, how we got all these Dolphins fans pulling out stats and, well, he was only paid $800K, and I can't tell you what, not a single Dolphins fan tweeted at me after the game how good Matt Moore's performance was. So I'm glad that Bills game finally shut up you Dolphins fans. Matt Moore is not a good quarterback, and you ain't going anywhere with them. And that Bills game proved it. I mean, Kyle, we said it. There were some interceptable balls in that Jet game. There was one picked off by Matt Moore, but there should have been two more intercepted. And I wish you had the plays queued up because I like to see it.
I think I might have one of them, but we'll see if I can pull that up in a little bit.
That doesn't take the original point. Congratulations to the Dolphins. Like I said, I will be cheering for them in the playoffs.
Wow, that is crazy to hear. I did not think that you would say that. I certainly will not be cheering.
I like a good underdog. What can I say?
Wow, even if it's a rival, I'm shocked. I am totally shocked right now. But anyway, so I didn't think that you would be with me in Adam Gase Coach of the Year. I mean, I think there's a couple really good candidates this year, but I'm definitely of the Adam Gase Coach of the Year hype train right now. And I just want to go list off a couple reasons why I think he should be Coach of the Year. One thing is the hiring of Vance Joseph. So we had on Connor Rogers last week, and Connor Rogers, in his defense of Todd Bowles, said, well, listen, Todd Bowles, his coaching staff is not doing him justice right now. His coaching staff is letting him down. But then we said, well, I don't know if we can really agree with what Connor's saying because he hires the staff. Now, obviously, coaches, they handpick and choose a staff. He hired Vance Joseph, and I think that Vance Joseph has done a tremendous job with a not-so-talented defense. By and large, Gary, they have terrible linebacker play. The secondary is very And, the defensive line, I mean, they're an aging group. Cam Wake, who would have thought that we would get this out of him? They finally utilized the player in the way that they should be. He should be a full-time player. They started off not using him, but then they saw, hey, listen, we need to use this guy full-time. Anyway, Vance Joseph has done a tremendous job. He was handpicked by Adam Gase, and I was wondering, did these two ever coach with one another? Because oftentimes when a coach, they will choose someone who they are familiar with. I asked two people. I asked Travis. Travis said no, that they haven't. But then our buddy Max Himmelrich will be on next week. He said that in San Francisco in 2008, the both of them were on that San Francisco staff. whereas Vance was the DB's coach and Gase was an offensive assistant. So take that for what it's worth. But it's not like they worked with each other for years. So it's not like they had tremendous familiarity with one another. But I think that was a great hire. But it's not like he just hired his own guys, too. He also kept some guys in-house. One guy that he kept in-house was none other than Darren Rizzi, the special teams coach, who some people thought that maybe he was going to be the interim coach last year after Joe Philbin was fired. But the interesting thing about that is, Rizzi's been criticized at certain points in time for his special teams play, but his special teams has been coming through in the clutch in the recent weeks, Gary. I mean, they did have a punt return for a touchdown earlier in the year with Jakeem Grant. They had a block punt for a touchdown against the Jets last week. And that Kenyon Drake return right at the end of the fourth quarter, Gary, I think that people aren't giving that enough credit. That 15 extra yard, I mean, if you take the touchback, you're at the 25. But the fact that he got it to the 40-yard line and it was blocked really well, I mean, 15 yards, that's the difference between a 70-yard field goal and a 55-yard field goal.
Absolutely.
So that was huge. But he kept a guy in-house on the staff in Darren Rizzi. So, okay, coaching hires, I think that's another good thing that Gase has done. What else has he done well? Well, he swept the division rivals, right? We're hearing that Woody Johnson, one of the reasons why he might fire Bowles is because he's getting blown out, but he's getting blown out by division rivals. There's nothing worse than losing to the division. He swept both of them. And I'm going to have to pull up when our buddy Travis Wingfield comes on. He had an interesting video about that sweeping, but I'll pull that up when the time comes. He took bad talent, Gary, and made them good. And anyone who's been a listener to this show consistently knows that we didn't think the Miami Dolphins had a talented roster. Gary, when we were doing our AFC East power rankings in terms of all the different positions, consistently, the Miami Dolphins ranked towards the bottom, Gary. Very few times did they rank towards the top. And it's not just our rankings. Take our rankings for what it's worth. PFF said that they had one of the worst rosters in the preseason, and a bunch of other media outlets also said the same. So he took, I would argue, an inferior roster, and he's making them good. His game management is good. This is another place where both, I would say, Rex and Bowles really struggle with game management. When to call a timeout, when not to call a timeout, when to punt, when not to punt, when to throw the challenge flag, when not to. He's been good in the clutchest of moments, and that's a big reason why we've seen them win these late games and have these late game comebacks. He's not afraid to lay the hammer with his players, whether they're a veteran or not. See what he did to Jay Ajayi in week 1. Jay Ajayi did not make the trip to Seattle. Why did he make the trip to Seattle? Because of, I don't know the exact story, but apparently he wasn't performing up to Gase's standards. So Gase said, you know what? I know you're a tremendous talent, but, you're just not going to even travel with the team. Laid the hammer on him, and you can best believe that probably motivated Jay Ajayi for the rest of the season. He also cut garbage players. And yes, this is Gase's doing. Make no bones about it. Because Gase, I don't know the full extent of how much power does he have. I don't think he's got Bill Belichick type of power in terms of personnel, but he's got some type of power in terms of player personnel. He cut those garbage players. I believe it was after that horrible Tennessee loss. Jameel Douglas, Dallas Thomas, and that other bum. Gary, help me out here. Yeah, Billy Turner. Cut all three of those bums, and what happened? The line played tremendous after that and really hasn't looked back since. Now, you can argue, okay, well, there's some other good candidates. Look what Belichick's done. He did it without Brady for 4 weeks. And, he could go 14-2 without having Tom Brady. Yes, that's a great accomplishment, but it is Bill Belichick, and he never wins it. And he's got a very talented roster. He's got a lot of pieces in place. So I don't know that if we're not going to give it to him every year, then why would we all of a sudden give it to him this year?
Well, you just said it right there. Bill Belichick really should get it every season, Kyle. Are we denying that? I mean, this is basically the second place trophy. Whoever gets the coaching of the year, that's how I see it. And the only person I think that really has a good case for against Adam Gase is Jack Del Rio. I think what he did in Oakland to turn around this year is simply impressive. Now they just lost their quarterback just like Miami did, so we'll see what they could do now. But I think that's the only candidate that I would say holds a candlestick to Adam Gase right now.
That's an interesting point. I thought about him certainly as one of the people, but Gary, I didn't choose him. And the reason being is because, I think that you give more credit there to Reggie McKenzie, the GM. He's done a masterful job building a young team and drafting extremely well. I thought the strongest candidate besides Gase would be Jason Garrett. When you look what he's done with these rookies, a rookie quarterback and Dak Prescott took a 4-win team last year. They certainly don't have a good defense. But then again, I think this team was highly competitive in 2014. Could have very well won the divisional round in Green Bay had they ruled that Dez Bryant catch a catch. So but then again, I think that for that reason, I would still take it to Gase because Miami was a losing culture. They've just been bad and traditionally blown games late for years, for almost a decade, Gary. But
let's, Kyle, if we're going to say losing culture, I mean, Oakland hasn't been in the playoffs since 2002. So, Miami is definitely has a notch over them as far as that category goes. I wouldn't say that's a fair argument because then you have to give it to Oakland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Oakland did make some strides last year. They were on that upwards trajectory. They had 7 wins last year, and they lost a couple late. But, they looked like they were a competitor last year, whereas Miami, the way that they had finished last year.
Miami has a great argument. And like I said, I believe it comes down to Jack Del Rio or Adam Gase. Jason Garrett definitely has a say in it too, but I believe those two are the hot candidates. There's another example. Kiko Alonso and Byron Maxwell, Kyle. Those guys over in Philadelphia, they were pretty much, their careers were looking like they were going to be in the toilet. Kiko Alonso was a backup to Michael Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, and Byron Maxwell was just a guy that was constantly getting torched. And though Byron Maxwell would give up a big play here and there, in large part, Adam Gase and Vance Joseph kind of redirected their career, to the days where Kiko Alonso was playing in Buffalo until where Byron Maxwell was playing in Seattle. So I think that in itself also is a good point to bring up as well.
And that's a great point that you make because good coaching staffs put players in positions where they can succeed. And I think that we're seeing it with both those players that you mentioned, and then 2 other players also pop into mind. Tannehill, I think, is a pretty good quarterback, but, the Dolphins struggled mightily the past couple of years when they asked him to drop back 50-something times in a game, and they would throw it 70-something% of the time. They're not doing that this year. They're having much more of a balanced approach. His red zone offense, Gase's red zone offense has been tremendous, in my opinion. Give him props there. And the way they're using Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry had, 110-plus receptions last year? They would run the offense through him. They're not doing that this year. Obviously, he's still a big part of that offense, but it's not relying on a slot receiver. And, Gary, I don't really know any successful NFL offenses that run their offense through a slot receiver.
No. I don't want to – you can't say Wes Welker back in New England because they had so much – it's number 12, Tom Brady has a lot to say with that. But like you said, no, I don't – any successful offense does not use their slot receiver as their number 1 weapon. Yeah.
Anyway, it's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm sure we can revisit it later on in the show. And let's go ahead and let's bring on our Miami Dolphins contributor, none other than Mr. Travis Wingfield of Welcome to Perfectville.com and the Finalysis podcast. You can catch his writing over at the Right Travis Wright blog on Welcome to Perfectville.com. His podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and all that good stuff. What's going on, Travis?
Not too much, man. Just celebrating probably the best weekend I've had in, I don't know, years. A long, long time, that's for sure. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good by and large, Gary. Our good buddy Austin Howard just sent me a Joe Namath Jets jersey in the mail, one of those throwback authentic ones. So that was pretty cool. I literally just opened that up less than an hour ago. So that kind of made my day. I'm on my school break right now, so I haven't been at work the past couple of days. So, Travis, other than seeing you guys make the playoffs, I'm doing pretty well.
Well, I'm glad to hear, buddy. I know it wasn't what you guys wanted to see, and you mentioned that sweep video that I put on Facebook and Twitter earlier in the weekend. That was pretty good to hear you comment on that because I know you probably saw it, but I hadn't heard you say anything about it yet. So I know we'll get to that later. But yeah, man, I like to bet on football, and I swept the week this weekend, and Dolphins won and the Chiefs won obviously for us, and then the WSU Cougars are playing here in about a half an hour in the Holiday Bowl, and I was going to encourage you to DVR that game so you can get a look at Luke Falk and see what you think of him in a bowl game. So, yeah, all good things from where I sit.
I'll have to do that. Luke Falk, that is none other than your quarterback. I'll have to check him out. And another good thing for you is he's coming back. He's coming back.
He is. Yeah, hopefully for a Heisman and a berth to the Rose Bowl. But
here's the video. Now, I don't. Hopefully, you guys can hear this, but this is your place, Travis.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the screen right now, for those of you that are checking in on YouTube, those of you that listen to the audio, maybe you'll want to, go and check out our YouTube page, subscribe to that YouTube channel, and go ahead and check out this video. And let's go ahead and play this.
What are you doing?
Well, it's been 13 years since we've had a good sweeping, so I figured I'd take out the trash and move another Dolphins victory. So sweeping out the Jets and Bills right on out of here on the way to the playoffs. Fins up.
So those of you that aren't going to look at the video portion of that, he's got it looks like a Bills magnet and a Jets magnet, and he's sweeping it towards the back door. And I saw you also post that on Facebook, and you said, man, when my team's good, I like to talk a lot of trash.
Yeah, but we don't get many opportunities, so I have to take advantage of it.
In New Jersey, Travis, that counts for a good sock in the mouth where I come from.
Oh, man.
That's all I'm saying. Thank God you're out on the West Coast. But that was all in good fun.
Based on seeing some of your guys' workout videos and when I step on the scale, I probably don't want to go that way with you two. So good thing I'm out here on the West Coast and a good few thousand miles away from you guys.
That was gold, though. That was classic, though.
It was pretty good. We'll have to send you Gary's mixed martial arts fight, and you'll take a look at that one.
That'll probably get me to shut up a little bit more too, won't it?
Hey, but I gotta say, Travis, you got a good taste in a rug. I own the same rug in my TV room. So.
Oh, nice. That's the lady, man. She does all that stuff for me. So.
Yeah.
I think that's Chris Kruger, who's going to be coming on later in the show. He keeps calling my place immaculate because of what he's seeing in the background. I take no credit for that. That's all my wife's doing. A lot of these paintings and stuff are her own. So you know how it is, Travis. I know how it is. Although Gary, I think you're responsible for most of the decorating at your place, though, right?
Like I said, it's one of the things. I'm in my office right now, so we use this as a spare bedroom at times. So I'm not trying to defend the decor in here. Yes, you see a Buffalo Bills throw on the wall. That's it.
Well, I wasn't knocking your room, Gary. I was saying your place is nice overall. We've seen your garage. We've done the Facebook Lives and stuff. I was throwing you a compliment, man, because you actually have some pretty good interior design skills.
Yeah, one day I'll put up a video of the tour of my house. How about that?
There you go.
Anyway, Travis, tell us what's on your mind, man. I saw that you put out a blog piece. I think it was from the 26th to the 27th. I haven't read it yet. Welcome to perfectville.com. I can pull that up on the screen. But before I do that, what else is on your mind? What else would you like to talk about in terms of your Miami Dolphins? The floor is yours, man.
I was trying to think of a good piece to write this week. I usually do the review and then the preview on Mondays and Fridays, and I usually try to squeeze one in the middle of the week. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, and I was trying to think of good comparisons from the 2008 season when they went to the playoffs last and think of some parallels. And I was trying to think about some of the pass rushers and, with Wake and Sue. I mean, even though we got destroyed by the Bills offense, Sue had another awesome game. He even had the third down a pass breakup, or he batted a pass, whatever, before Rex punted on that final drive. And so he's just playing awesome. And then Cam Wake, obviously, like you mentioned earlier in the show before I came on, how he's had this resurgence and, 11 and a half sacks, coming off of a torn Achilles, playing a third of the season where he's in limited snap count. And then, also he's had 4 sacks called back from defensive holdings or illegal contacts in the secondary. So I was trying to draw that parallel. I was thinking, what is it about this team that is similar to that 2008 team? And I think you can draw a lot of parallels because that year we had Joey Porter rack up 17 sacks in the one good year he had with the Dolphins. But I couldn't really match a second guy. I mean, I was thinking Randy Starks or Kendall Langford or whatever it was. But I think you just kind of have the general idea of a no-name defense for the most part because, back then we had guys like Andre Goodman making plays for us in the secondary and Will Allen and a host of others. And this year, Tony Lippett and Xavier Howard and you guys mentioned Byron Maxwell earlier and Bobby McCain's playing pretty well. Isa Abdul-Qaddus. So just a bunch of young guys with names that aren't established yet that are playing pretty good ball in that defense, regardless of the trouncing of the Bills offense. So I think that's the biggest parallel I can find between the two teams is how much better the defense has played. And then obviously you have Adam Gaze's influence on the offense that has, really picked up since the winning streak started or the winning ways.
And Travis, you are the offensive coordinator of Perfectville and your co-host of your podcast, Kevin Dern. He's the defensive coordinator of Perfectville. So being that you're the offensive guy, tell us, why Gase's offense has been so effective in recent weeks. I mean, we've seen the amount of points that they've been putting up recently, even despite the fact that Matt Moore's been at quarterback. And Travis, I think the main reason why Gary and I got a lot of flack last week is because of our criticism of Moore. I didn't really think, especially me, I didn't think I was that critical of Miami in a bad way, but I was very critical of him. Yet, even though he's still operating on the offense there, they're still putting up points. So we have to attribute that to Gase. What is making Gase's offense so effective?
Yeah, well, one of the things you mentioned earlier before I came on also was and I know you've talked about this in the past with putting a staff together. I know you're big on that, and I agree with you. I think that's probably one of the most important things a head coach can do is assembling, good people around him. And you mentioned Vance Joseph and Darren Rizzi in those two guys. But, Clyde Christensen was a guy that coached with the Colts for a long time, and he's the offensive coordinator. And he brought that stretch zone play or stretch zone offense to Miami, and that's where, Jay Ajayi is so dangerous. And you get an athletic guard like Laramie Tunzel, you can make some good things happen on the running game. So I think that's a big part of it. Offensively, it's my biggest thing I've been excited about is the way he manufactures opportunities in the red zone. I mean, you guys saw it in Buffalo, the Kenny Stills little out route where he scored that touchdown. They did it in New York with some design rollouts where they found Deion Sims and some peel back plays. And it was with Ryan Tannehill too. There's so many opportunities in the red zone where they're consistently having an opportunity to throw into an open window for a touchdown. And obviously
Did we lose him?
I think we might have lost him. Hopefully he'll connect back with us. I think the internet connection is good over here for me. But Travis, if you can hear us, hopefully you come back. Anyway, Gary, while we're waiting for him, I think it has something to do with Chris Kruger connecting. Mr. Kruger's had some connection issues. Hey, Travis, you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. I don't know if that was your fault, Travis. I don't think it was. But anyway, continue. You were talking – the last we heard is you were talking about Clyde Christensen, and he was a longtime coordinator for the Colts.
Yeah. So he surrounded himself with a good staff, and, Christensen brought over that stretch zone offense that Ajayi – I get to the point about him manufacturing plays in the red zone. Did you guys hear that?
I heard it, but go ahead. One more time.
Okay, so the premise of Gase's red zone offense is something I really like, and it's kind of the whole field he does this on. But they really run routes to set up players to open things up for one guy, and the quarterback has a simplified read based on those routes. And they did it in Buffalo with a little Kenny Stills out route on the goal line for a touchdown with a smash concept where they ran a fade on the other side of the stack formation to get that area opened up. And he did it in the Jets game with some design rollouts and some kind of peel backs to the tight end that he threw to Deion Sims. And then he did it with Ryan Tannehill throughout, the time when he was healthy as well. And then obviously the running game down there can help a lot too. So his expertise in the red zone has been a huge change. The stretch zone with him and Clyde Christensen and getting the staff around that can help him out. And then the game management, like you mentioned, has been awesome all year. So those are three things I think that really help the offense. And then the two things that really I think were the biggest factor in the last two games was how poorly the Jets and Bills defense played. I mean, Gary, you had to have seen how awful that tackling was. I mean, the Damian Williams play where he caught the little 3rd and 3 flare route and then busted 44 yards down the field. I mean, that's like elementary, peewee type football form tackling where he just drops his shoulder and gets his ass ran over. I mean, that's pathetic. So they were tackling that like that the whole game. 10 guys in the field in that one play you guys mentioned, and then obviously the Jets defense isn't exactly playing its best right now either. So I think those were two big factors with Matt Moore being able to have success.
Yeah, I mean, look at this right here.
Yeah, that's the other one too.
The tackling is the biggest thing that stood out to me, and I think Travis, I like to check Stephen Ross's payroll. I like to see if he still has Dan Carpenter on the payroll because he missed a few field goals that really Kyle, his biggest thing is he's not good from 35 and below, and he's not good from 50, but from 40 to 49, that guy is money. A 45 and a 46-yard field goal he misses. It puzzled me. How's this guy still even on the roster is a mystery to me.
I think it has a lot to do with, what's really the alternatives. I mean, we see young kickers come in all the time, undrafted guys, and they make a name for themselves. But when you look at some of those available guys, Robbie Gold had his name out there, big Randy Bullock, he had his –
There's an upgrade right there.
I don't know about that. I mean, who else? You had what the heck is that guy's name who hit the kicks for the Saints in the Super Bowl? Garrett Hartley. I mean, he's also a head case. I wouldn't want him either. But I'm agreement with you, Gary. I don't know how this guy's missed how many extra points over the last 2 seasons. It's 10 plus extra points.
We had an opportunity to pick up at one point. Prater got released from the Broncos. He was a street free agent for a while. I don't get why, he's in Detroit kicking tail. So
he had the whole alcohol problem.
Whatever. I would have sent to AA and signed him a contract the day of.
Hey, Sebastian Janikowski kicks just fine under the influence all the time. I think he's okay.
Yeah. Remember Mike Vanderjack? He had an all-pro season when he was liquored up.
Hey, Travis, what about this play right here? So this is Drake's big reverse touchdown right here. And I don't know if we could say this is Bill's tackling. I mean, he ran into a wall and then just reverse field.
One of my biggest takeaways from that play and the rest of the game was how well they handled Kyle Williams. And maybe Gary can expand this for me a little bit. I think he had a back injury coming in, but he got his butt whipped by Laramie Tunsil and Jermon Bushrod quite a bit.
I wouldn't say that. There's a few times when he got in the backfield and made Tunsil look pretty stupid. So I would hold on before you. I'd want to revise that tape. I watched it 3 times. It wasn't as bad as you think it was. He was actually getting some of Tunsil.
I think you can make a case for him winning maybe some one-on-one matchups and making some plays, but when you look at what happened on the plays he lost, I mean, I know it's not his fault that the rest of the defense didn't tackle, but I mean, to go for almost 300 rushing yards, and a lot of that came off, plays like the big play to Ajayi with 10 guys in the field. That was Kyle Williams' gap, and Tunsil kind of moved him out of there. So that was a big one that I really noticed.
Yeah. And don't forget this play that we're watching right here. If you think about it, Kyle Williams, the one who makes him do that big spin around.
Yeah.
He beats Bushrod across the face. So your example kind of falls by the wayside when you put this play on.
Yeah, it's not to mention, too, that Steen did chip him on that play as well, so he's kind of, in a sense, fighting a double on that play.
Yeah, so and that's been Kyle Williams' MO the whole season because he's so good at penetrating. Here you go. It's like, keep in mind, if Kenyon Drake continues to run that way, he gets stopped for a loss.
Yeah. And
that has all to do with number 95. And let me be the first to say, before we get you off, I got to ask Travis real quick, Kyle, because it's been boiling my mind. Because you and I caught a lot of flack over this Matt Moore situation. Travis, is Matt Moore a slight drop-off from Ryan Tannehill? Because this is what Dolphins fans were throwing at us all last week.
Oh, you mentioned watching the tape, Gary. I've watched the tape a couple times myself, and the biggest takeaway for me was how bad Matt Moore was in this game. It's ludicrous, and I've been fighting with people on the message boards today a little bit, and just comparing what Matt Moore has done compared to Ryan Tannehill. I mean, I think it was after the 4th and 1 stuff. It was 14-0. Dolphins got a 4th and 1 stop at our own 40-yard line, and then they had like a 3-yard run with Ajayi, and then Matt Moore misses a wide open Kenny Stills when he had a chance to get up the sideline for an easy first down, if not more. And then Devontae Parker on a crossing route throws it behind him, broken up. We punt. Bills go down and score. They get the ball back. He misses 2 more throws where he's short hopping it and underthrowing it. Whatever, they punt it back, and then they get the 3rd down stack from Cam Wake back to the 2-yard line, punt it back to the Dolphins, and then here comes the Dolphins with he short hops Stills again. Ajayi busts a 12-yard run, and then Matt Moore just kind of throws him up in the end zone that gets picked off. And then everyone's like, well, he played well in the second half. I'm thinking, no, he didn't. He made some simple throws that, like we mentioned, Damian Williams busts a 45-yard run after the catch. Devontae Parker, with that one you had on the screen earlier, busts a 56-yard touchdown. So, I mean, he misses so many throws. The arm talent drop-off is ridiculous. And I think it was last week on the show, the one thing he does do better is he's better to recognize pressure quicker than Ryan Tannehill does.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of a veteran presence type of thing because the talent. I mean, even the drive on the throw on the Andrew Franks long field goal drive, the 3rd and 10 to Kenny Stills, he sits down in a window and that ball just kind of flutters out and barely gets there. So you really have to scheme things for him to work. You can't really play with the arm talent. So it's a big step down for me.
I'm about to pull up that interception that he had in the red zone. Horrible interception. How has Adam Gase been scheming it up to avoid his deficiencies?
I think in that Jets game, what he really did most, I mean, Matt Moore only threw the ball 18 times in that game, and they really hit the big play a lot. I mean, Jarvis Landry takes that slide to the house. The one that he floated up to Kenny Stills was a really good job of recognizing, zero coverage and a blitz and getting it off. And I think that's basically what he did in that game was just, hey, we're going to get one-on-one opportunities because they're going to kind of blitz in here heavy and play cover zero. So if we get one-on-one, we'll take a chance. In the first play of the second half, he had Devontae Parker smoked. I think it was Justin Burris who ended up getting the interception on him. So he was by him, but the ball just kind of fluttered up there and made it. DB had a chance to make a play on it. And then against the Bills, I mean, obviously the game plan was to run the ball. I mean, you go for 200 on him last time, and then it was working from the start. I mean, that run Ajayi's touchdown run where he broke 2 tackles in the backfield. I mean, that's just kind of a tone-setting type of run. So I think they were pretty much committed to running the ball, and they did work in some of the soft zones underneath the safeties and linebackers in this game a little bit more than they did in the Jets game. But that's where I think he really struggles. But the Bills, they just were up to the task. I mean, I think this game was more on how poorly the Bills defense played than how well the Dolphins passing game played.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And when we get our buddy Chris Kruger on, we're going to talk about 10 men on the field, 10 for J.J.'s run. And let me tell you something. Rex Ryan, he's been known as a defensive genius. And while he does have the ability to scheme up absolutely awesome game plans, and he's never really had atrocious defenses within a given season, and he's had some absolutely awesome, tremendous defenses. Miscommunication and late substitutions, that is nothing new for a Rex Ryan defense. We saw that pretty much his entire tenure with the New York Jets. Saw it last year with Buffalo, saw it again this year, and it's in the most crucial of stages. I have to think that probably was another thing in consideration when they did fire him. But anyway, Travis, thank you so much for coming on. You run a great podcast. I listen to absolutely every episode. I say that every time you're on because it's the truth. You can follow Travis on Twitter at Travis_writes. His blog, welcome to perfectville.com. When is the next blog post going to be out, Travis?
I'd like to get a piece out in the middle of this week, but if not, it'll be the Friday preview of the Patriots game, which, we don't even know if it's going to be a competitive game or not with Dolphins hopefully resting guys that played 90 snaps in this game on defense. So should be Friday at the latest. Okay, and your Finalysis episode, when can we expect that out? We're going to record tomorrow, so most likely Thursday. Okay, cool. Thanks, Travis. We appreciate you coming on. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one. Travis, keep it up. Take care, Gary. Okay, and next we're going to have on our buddies from the Rock Pile Report, our resident, you're the resident Bills fan, Gary, but if we don't have you on, or we always have you on, but if we are most likely Bills people to come on, I would say, none other than Chris Kruger and Drew Gear, and boy, oh boy, we can see him right now. This is the setup of Mr. Chris Kruger's kitchen right here.
Kitchen / recording studio. I mean, it's more decorated than Gary's place, obviously.
Oh, Chris, when you come down here, you got to see Gary's entire place. And let me tell you what, I think Gary's the brains of the operation over there. It's pretty nice, man.
Chris, my house is sweeter than your dance moves. I'll just tell you. I'll just leave it at that.
Wow. That's a strong statement there. So speaking of strong statements, Gary, I'm going to make one right now. I showed up today to work, and I sat down in my office, and, I'm there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking in my head, because yesterday I was, I had the day off, and I was like, I should really be doing some All-22 review and some film stuff for this Bills game, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it, man. I just couldn't stomach it. So instead, I sat down and watched Westworld and opened a beer, and I said, you know what, it's okay. I'll figure out a way to get over this. It's going to be all right. So I'm sitting in my office, and it's about 10:30 in the morning. And I hear all this commotion going on outside, and I hear people talking, oh, did you hear Rex got fired? Oh, all this stuff. And I just went and shut my door and just kind of sat down on the floor for a second. Like, if I had been at home, this isn't a joke. I wanted to, what I really wanted in that moment was to just lay down on the floor and just let it all soak in. Like, just where gravity didn't feel like it was pulling on me so hard, and just let it all soak in. Another just era of futility gone by.
I'm in that same boat. You know what? I had a laugh. I'm like, oh, here we go. At this point, I'm numb to it, though. I don't know how Drew and Chris, you guys feel, but I'm completely numb to this situation. We've seen it time and time again. And then I'm jealous of a team like a Pittsburgh Steelers that's only had 3 or 4 head coaches throughout their whole life of their existence. I mean, we could go through 3 or 4 head coaches within a 7-year period.
Well, I will tell you this, because Kyle Trimble, one of our listeners, looked it up. Since the Bills joined the NFL, we've only had 3 coaches, Lou Saban, Chuck Knox, and Marv Levy, last at least 4 seasons.
Doesn't surprise me. I'm going to quote the great Nate Diaz after he beat Conor McGregor. Doesn't surprise me, mother truckers. Doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't. And I think the most damning thing about his firing at this point is that, I mean, for the last few weeks, you listened to our show. For those of you who might listen out there, we've preached continuity. We've talked about, first frustrated as I get, I've talked about why continuity is important.
Yeah.
Right now, the feeling I have in the pit of my stomach is that we've literally just taken everything and just thrown it out the window. And we're going to try to start this over from scratch.
Yeah, you know what, though? I'm kind of encouraged because and I said, and Kyle, you could attest to this, I would have liked to see one more year of Rex because I'm not a fan of getting rid of a guy after 2 years. But on that same token, this play that we're pulling up right here on the screen, to me, this is unexcusable. This is almost like if you're my best friend, you could be my best friend and have a drug problem, and I'll try to help you out as best I can. I will do whatever it takes to get you off that drug, whether I have to empty out my bank account, whatever. But if you're my friend and you make a pass at my woman, and this is essentially what Rex Ryan just did. He made a pass at my woman, but by these 10 guys being on the field in overtime, I could not excuse him for this play.
No, and that's something that we talked about, not only on the way to the truck, not only just as throughout the course of the game, on the way to the truck. I was talking to my family and everybody about it. To anyone who would listen to me, just talking about what I would do. What are you doing? You're an NFL head coach. This is something that Pop Warner coaches struggle with. This is something that some high school coaches struggle with.
Yeah.
It's not something that an NFL caliber head coach has a problem with. Not to mention the NFL caliber coach who has one of the biggest coaching staffs in football.
Right.
You have 27 guys standing next to you on the sideline. And you know what? Somehow 28 of you couldn't see that there was 10 guys on the field. What were the other? So if Rex Ryan says he didn't know, and Rob Ryan says he didn't know, what were the other 26 guys doing?
Yeah,
isn't that someone's job?
Yeah, but like I said, Kyle, Drew, Chris, with a firing of a head coach, always comes a sense of hope for the following season. And no, you guys should laugh. Let it out.
Oh.
We finally have an owner that gets it, though.
Ooh.
And he sees that, hey, listen, Rex Ryan's probably tapped out as far as his potential goes. Better to nip this thing in the butt right now than to continue on with the same old. Now, fans might not want to hear it. You and I might not want to hear it. But this is the God's honest truth because Rex only took the Jets so far. And, let's face it, maybe he's only primed for an 8-8 season, 9-7 at best. And that's not going to cut it.
Chris, I'll be honest. Hearing him talk about hope, I need you to get me another beer.
But does Terry Pagula get it, though? Because we all heard at the beginning of the season, it's playoffs or bust for Rex. There's an ultimatum. And then Terry was very outspoken in the media. Him and his wife, Kim, both said there is no ultimatum for Rex. Well, lo and behold, the Bills didn't make the playoffs, and now he's fired. So was that a bunch of nonsense that they were just feeding to the media and feeding to the fans?
Said that on the show, even if there was that ultimatum, no one's going to flat out admit that. You're not going to tell your coach mid-season, hey, listen, this is the playoffs or bust.
Yeah, I get that.
We pointed that out several times on the show, but no one's going to point that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe there was no ultimatum given, okay? But this is what I'm going to say to you. There's and we're going to talk about it in a lot more detail on our show. It's going to be one of the main tenets of what we have to talk about. You can mark that as number 1 for the night. I'm sure I'll say it about 15 more times. But when you get down to the numbers and you look at, I think statistically, it's hard to tell whether our team this year better than last year, where you end up. But one thing, at the end of the season last year, we walked away with a laundry list of items that we knew needed to be improved if we were going to be a playoff football team. Communication, okay? Like, I'm just going to look at the list real quick, just so your listeners can kind of go over this with me. So at the end of the season in 2015, our offseason to-do list consisted of fix the communication issues on defense, improve the consistency of the defense, and get stronger red zone play on both sides of the ball. And those were the main three main things that we needed to fix in the offseason. Secondary to that was bring more pressure, because obviously our sacks were down, and to improve our takeaway numbers. So now you go back and you look at where we are right now in 2016 going into the offseason. And you know what our laundry list of items to fix, had Rex Ryan still been our head coach as of this afternoon, our list of items to fix would have been fix the communication issues on defense, improve the consistency of the defense. I mean, we allowed way too many yards per play, stronger red zone play on defense. So what you're telling me is that you've told the head coach the importance of improvement. I've heard the talk, and yet at the end of a season, I've still got the same problems that are setting my team back. I think if anything else, those are the most damning things that lead you to make a move like this when your team, well, maybe not having a losing record, and hey, they still have a shot at 8-8, but that's the only thing I can think of that makes you move on from a coach like Rex Ryan.
I got an update to my phone 10 minutes ago. Darius says Rex Ryan's defense had too much detail and should have been more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean that was, but always these players speak out after a coach is gone. Hey, listen, the bottom line is this.
Okay. Yeah.
Rex is gone.
No, you go, Gary.
Rex is gone. And now we got to look at who's going to be a possible candidate. And these are some of the things I'm wondering right away. I'm always thinking, all right, screw this Jets game. That's pretty much how I feel. I could care less about this game, to be honest with you.
Now, unfortunately, I have no choice, Gary, but to care about it. You want to know why? Because back in the offseason, I remember it was the day of the first preseason game against the Redskins. I came out with this proclamation. Me, my father, my family, we were all out at dinner, and people were asking me about the Bills and what I thought and picking my brain. And I said, I see a 10-11 win football team. And from the other end of the table, my dad spit half of a roll out on the table and started laughing. And he told me that he's like, you're cut off because you must be drunk if you think that they're going to win 10, 11 games. So we went back and forth. I said, okay, put your money where your mouth is if you think they're going to be that bad. So the bet came down that the line was 7 games. If the Bills didn't win more than 7 football games, the loser, I bet over, he took under. The loser has to provide the other one with an entire smokers full of meat. I'm talking pulled pork, brisket, chicken, the whole 9. How the hell did I end up in a place where my hopes for this bet now rest on the shoulders of E.J. Manuel? How did I end up here? I thought it was a lock. I have no choice but to watch this game.
It could be worse. You could be relying on the shoulders of Bryce Petty or Ryan Fitzpatrick.
And one of the worst things about having to watch EJ is you got to hear his stupid hard count or his
I
stupid.
don't know why you don't like his hard count.
No, his cadence is the most annoying thing ever. I don't understand.
I gotta tell you, I watched that Chiefs game. I beg to differ. I think Alex Smith's the worst, but
No, see, Alex Smith sounds tough. He's like, he sounds like he's got a really deep, powerful voice.
And then the guy takes his helmet off. His neck's skinnier than a pencil. And
Okay, you guys want to talk about tough hard counts? How about this? Aaron Rodgers sounds like he has a really tough hard count when he's down there calling plays and calling audibles. And then I see him in commercials for State Farm wearing skinny jeans. Hard counts do not equate to toughness or manliness. I rest my case.
So you're saying that EJ Manuel's tough then?
No, I'm just saying that hard counts and toughness have nothing to do with each other.
All I know is EJ's hard count could draw Sheldon Richardson offside with ease.
I'm not going to lie. Sheldon Richardson, I mean, that guy.
Incompetent boob.
I can't wait to pick your brain about this later, Kyle. This is going to be so much fun.
Well, thank God Breno's not playing. Thank God he's on IR. But anyway, guys, I know you have your own show to do, and I don't want to hold you guys up any longer.
Hold on. I want to ask one question, my buddies up north. Early head coaching candidate. Have you guys decided in your mind who'd you like to have?
Well, I've looked at the early lists, 7 of them, and I'll be honest, none of them jump out to me and say, hey, here's a guy who, I mean, last week, I don't know if you listened to our podcast, but last week we ran down the coaches that the Browns have hired and then fired after 2 years, and how they've gone through this coaching search and never found any success. Doing what we've kind of done here for the short term is getting rid of guys after 2-3 seasons. They're gone. They're out the door. What they did was they kept just trying to take flyers on highly rated or highly touted offensive or defensive coordinators. That's all they were doing was, okay, well, maybe I'll get lucky with this guy, because no one good would come there. And anyone else that they could get who was a name was only there because they'd flamed out somewhere else. The problem with the Bills' early coaching list is that it's a bunch of glorified coordinators, but no one knows what they're going to be like as a head coach in the NFL. Or you can go out there and get some retread. I'm sure John Fox will be fired after this year. You could go out and get a John Fox, but do you want that?
No.
Probably not. So I'm sorry. There's not a single name on this list that really jumps out to me as something I want on my sidelines. Right?
I want young offensive.
Kyle Shanahan.
Yes, I was going to say Kyle Shanahan.
Kyle, you're going with Todd Bowles year number 3, no doubt about it, man. You're gonna miss that.
I'm not denying that. It's not what I want.
If I had to pick one, I'd go with Jim Schwartz, just because I want to watch the players have to carry him around on the field after a victory. I want to watch more of that.
Hey, is that Reed? Is that big old Reed?
Yeah, he just saw Reed's ass.
Reed Ferguson, people.
He just walked
Say hi,
in front of the.
Say hi to the people, Reed.
I thought Reed was going to get picked up when the Eagles' long snapper went down.
We did too.
Yeah,
we did too.
Yeah. Well, his fate decided at the end of the year, but let us run and do our show.
I tell you right now, my early selection, you guys are not going to be happy with this. I want the red madness, Tom Coughlin.
Wow.
Tom Coughlin for head. Oh my God,
Gary, you should be fired from your own show.
I should come over to Buffalo and whoop your ass, Chris. That's what I'm going to
do. And you know what? I'll sell tickets, Gary. We'll put it on the line. We'll stream it for $5.
You know what? I can't wait till July rolls around when I get to see Chris. All right,
it's going to be awesome.
Hey, so that's our buddies at the Rock Pile Report on Twitter at Rock Pile Report, Instagram at The Rock Pile Report. They're on all the podcast mediums, Stitcher, iTunes, all that good stuff. They also do weekly Saturday Facebook Lives, which are very popular. The last one was at least at 2.5K views. So go and check them out. It's our favorite Buffalo Bills podcast. Thanks, guys. All right. Okay, so next we're going to get on our good buddy who we haven't spoke to and since probably around draft time, Gary. It's none other than Mr. Keith Beebe. What's going on, Keith?
Not much. How you guys doing?
What's up, Keith?
Nothing. It's been so long.
Yeah,
it has, man. We thought we were getting concerned for you for a moment there. We're like, is Keith okay? Is he?
No, I heard
milk cartons or something.
Yeah, we need to set up the.
No, I heard that from a lot of people actually, and it's just like I ended up taking a new job and was kind of thrown into it. So I went from hosting my own podcast, and I just brought on a new host, Ron, who's actually how I know you guys. And then it just went from that, and I ended up covering the draft in Chicago, which was kind of a mixed emotion kind of thing. It was good, and it also kind of sucked. And then, I mean, the next thing I know, I'm pretty much doing nothing but working. So things have since kind of leveled off, and I'm back to being a somewhat normal human, I guess.
Well, that's good to hear. You know, obviously working is a good thing. No one's going to tell you otherwise. You need to work hard. Everything is so competitive nowadays, but shoot, what's the saying go that we work or we live to work, not work to live, or am I saying that backwards? The hell, I feel like an idiot right now. Gary, help me out. Is it live to work or work to live? This is just terrible right now.
I live by the moniker, work hard, play hard. So I don't know about the one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, fair enough. All right, so Keith, what's going on in wrestling land right now? I know you're a big wrestling fan. I'm just kidding. Your Miami Dolphins are in the playoffs. Who would have thought?
I know.
I actually was scrolling through your Twitter timeline, and I saw that you had sent out a tweet, that nobody's really giving Mike Tannenbaum credit for two ballsy moves last spring, letting Lamar Miller walk and replacing Olivier Vernon with Andre Branch. And he said both paid off. 25 people liked that tweet, 5 retweeted it. I went on your show way back when in April, pre-draft, and I think Gary went on that same show, if I'm not mistaken, and we were talking about how, we're not fans of Mike Tannenbaum, and, we listed off a whole bunch of dumb moves that he's made, and you're like, yeah, I think sadly the joke of a operation that he was running, it's now down with us down in South Florida. But are you pleasantly surprised with Mike Tannenbaum now, or, what's the deal? Have you kind of turned the way that you view him?
He's still kind of a schmuck, I think, just in how he kind of carries himself. But even at the time when we had that discussion on my former show, I didn't have a problem with those moves, mainly because Lamar Miller, I think with the offense Adam Gase is going to bring in, looking for a more physical type of running game. I don't think Lamar Miller was ever that guy. He's not really good at running through contact. And then I remember we were laughing about the Olivier Vernon contract. I mean, it works for the Giants. I mean, they got a pass rusher who, I mean, if he's in a role where he doesn't have to do everything and you're not expecting him to eat the run, I mean, he's a good player. I mean, they're paying a ton for him. So, but I mean, the Dolphins, I mean, they let Lamar Miller walk. And then you've seen what Jay Ajayi and to a lesser degree what Kenny and Drake have done this year. I think people are going to take that trade-off. And then Branch, who's playing on a 1-year deal right now, a show-me contract, if you will, has put up, I mean, fairly comparable numbers to what Olivier Vernon is doing in New York. So as much as I like to make fun of Mike Tannenbaum, it's easy. He looks the part. But, I mean, he deserves props for those 2 moves. I mean, they worked out and they saved a ton of cash in the process.
Yeah, but maybe you might be giving Tannenbaum a little more credit than he deserves with those 2 moves. Because Kyle and Keith, let's face it, especially the Branch move. I mean, Mario Williams was the guy that was supposed to replace Olivier Vernon. It wasn't Andre Branch. Andre Branch was supposed to be a role player, if not, someone who was just a fill-in guy. Mario Williams did not pan out for the Dolphins, and the Dolphins paid him $8.5 million to play this year.
Even if it's a happy accident, though, I think it's – I mean, how do you not sign off on it at the point? Look what the Giants are paying for comparable production in Olivier Vernon.
I agree. I'm all about letting those 2 guys walk because I think Houston overpaid. I think New York overpaid. So, yeah. But
no, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice it works out. I mean, I'd rather be lucky than good anyway. I don't think Mike Tannenbaum's ever going to be some guy who competes for GM of the year. I think it would be in his best interest to listen to what Adam Gase thinks. And from everything I've read, it sounds like those 2 have a pretty good synergy going on right now in terms of the team connecting the roster on the field with what's going on in the front office. Because I think Adam Gase is actually a pretty good evaluator of talent. I think he knows what he wants to do on the offensive side of the football. And my favorite thing about him, and I could talk about that guy all day, I think you mentioned the Dolphins being in the playoffs, and they're a 6th seed. Are they going to do anything? Maybe they go to Pittsburgh and they already beat them once, but that was down in South Florida in October. Maybe they shock someone. I'm not expecting much this year, but this season's a validation of Adam Gase and the offensive mindset he brought in, the tweaks he made, the people he put in position to really run the on-field personnel, and it's working. And I mean, we haven't seen that. This team really hasn't won a playoff game since I was 16 years old. So, I mean, finally, you look at this team and think, maybe they're going in the right direction, and I think they are.
So, Keith, you live out in Chicago. Do you watch a lot of Chicago Bears games? Or decent catch them every now and then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because my parents have the Sunday ticket. I don't have it anymore, so I'll go over there to watch Dolphins games. But, yeah, I mean, more often than not, I'm watching what the Bears are doing. That's why I was such a big fan of Adam Gase. I mean, just seeing what he was able to get Jay Cutler's interception total down is pretty much a miracle. I think up until the last week of the season last year, he'd thrown 8, which is just ungodly low for someone like that. So, I mean, it's a small thing, but when you're able to get a guy who's so far into his career, like Jay Cutler has pretty much been pretty headstrong with all of his offensive coordinators and so on, and you're able to make a difference at that juncture of that guy's career, I think that says something.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask you, because if you are, watching Bears games, you would have known, what kind of schemes Adam Gase was running there compared to what he's doing now with Miami. And, the mark of a good coach is that they alter their scheme to suit what their players do well. They don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole, if you will. And, we saw that once Matt Moore came in, the Miami Dolphins offense did, switch up a little bit. It wasn't the exact same. So I'm wondering, how has the scheme differed from what he ran with his time in Chicago, Jay Cutler, that big, strong-armed quarterback, to kind of what he's doing now with the different Miami offensive personnel? How does it differ?
I think the big thing you're going to miss when you don't have Ryan Tannehill in there is the ability to have success with the read option, the ability to roll out successfully. I don't know that anyone in the league's better than Ryan Tannehill when it comes to throwing on the run, especially across his body at this point. And that's not even a homer-type statement. I mean, I defy people to find a guy out there who throws as well and as accurately and as consistently on the run as Ryan Tannehill. He does it well, to a point where early in his career, I thought he threw better on the run than he did in the pocket. So with Matt Moore, you treat him more like a pocket passer. You've seen – I don't know that it's – I mean, last Saturday with the real emphasis on the run game they had, I don't know if that's because they got such huge yardage out of JJ the first time and they want to go back to the well, or if they're looking to protect Matt Moore a little bit. I'm not sure what informed that decision, but I think that you lean on the run as much as ever. But the big thing with Adam Gase's offense that isn't going to change is the wide receiver play, because those guys and the way they run their routes, you're expected to be able to block. And, I mean, it's set up. So, I mean, you have these bigger physical receivers downfield, even though Jarvis Landry is not a huge guy in stature. And I realize Gary probably hates Jarvis Landry after all that talk last week. But one comparison I haven't seen from people is Jarvis Landry is the closest thing I've seen to Hines Ward, where he's just an absolute bull at that position. Plays really to an edge almost, to the point where, I mean, you had a lot of people thinking that shot he took at Aaron Williams was dirty, and it was too high. That's something that you absolutely have to keep low. So you'd like to see Jarvis take a little bit of recklessness out of his overall play. But, I mean, these receivers, Kenny Stills has proven himself to be a good blocker downfield. Leonte Carew, when he's in there, I mean, same thing. So, I mean, you've got these bigger bodies downfield, and they're able to create space, whether you're doing these pick plays that Adam Gase has really installed in Miami's offense to a successful degree, whereas they've tried to do it in the past and it's been a total failure. But of all the things that Adam Gase has been able to do with these guys, the number one thing, the biggest change I've seen is how they play in the red zone. They are outstanding in the red zone at this point, whereas in previous years,
I totally agree.
Not great. And I think a lot of that has to do with the route concepts they have in there. The fact that he's made a huge use out of Deion Sims. You had a lot of people talking about how that guy was never going to be anything more than an inline tight end. And I mean, I hate to use the example, but against the Jets, you saw that guy, especially on the goal line, was just getting free and just finding a spot.
Oh, don't
he was
give me
able to
that.
just-
You don't hate to use that example. You like to use that example. Don't try to be all
Not with you guys. I honestly, like, I hate those teams, but I definitely don't want to stir the pot around here because, I've been on the receiving end of that so long that, I definitely don't want to do that to anyone else. So it's not, there are other examples out there. Deion Sims, you could point out what he did, against Arizona, but you have these bigger physical receivers. You're able to work these pick plays. If you, a comparable example would be a lot of the stuff that Denver was doing when Adam Gase was there. Even if you have smaller guys like an Emmanuel Sanders or someone, you have these guys who can throw a good block, and it's all about the timing. And to Matt Moore's credit, he's really trying to get in there and get in. I think that's probably going to be the hardest part, are a lot of these timing plays that Ryan Tannehill was working to a fairly high degree with the receivers when he was healthy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Adam Gase, particularly the red zone offense. I think it's masterful. You just spoke about Deion Sims and how he's utilizing him, and nobody thought it was going to be anything more than an inline tight end. The play that I have on the screen right now is a simple rollout. It's 3rd and goal. And give credit to Matt Moore here. This is probably one of the better plays that he's made this season with the Dolphins, but he's very, very, very patient. And then it's a blown coverage, but Deion Sims, credit to him, he just finds the opening in the zone and he just gets right in for the touchdown. But, can you think of, I guess, like specifically, like when you compare that offense last year, what were they doing in the red zone that was so bad? I think back, Keith, to when we played you guys in London. You guys, because we had a couple of penalties down there. There was one time where you guys might have had like 7 plays in a row on the goal line, but you couldn't punch it in. Why was that offense, particularly in the red zone, so bad comparison to this one that Adam Gase has?
It starts with the offensive line. And another thing that Adam Gase gets credit for, and a lot of people killed him for it at the time, was putting Chris Forster in charge of that offensive line. People were like, no, that guy sucks. He has a terrible record. But this is the best I've seen Miami's offensive line look in, I don't know, I'd be probably since Richmond Webb was in there, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think it's better than the squads Jake Long played on. So, there's room to grow there. You've got a guy who's eventually going to become a stud left tackle in Laramie Tunsil. It would be nice if Pouncey wasn't always hurt. It sounds like he's still going to be around, though. I think Gase is a Pouncey guy. But it starts with their offensive line. They get that initial push. They're not getting bullied around anymore. And there isn't such – I thought with Joe Philbin's teams, because you just mentioned that game in London, which I believe was Joe Philbin's last game.
Yes, it was.
Thank God. As a Dolphins coach, they just put too much on the quarterback. You saw in a lot of those red zone plays in London, you saw Ryan Tannehill was running all over the place, just trying to make something happen. There's nothing cohesive about what that offense is doing in the red zone, and either he was getting killed, or that offensive line wasn't getting any push. They couldn't punch it in, or there was just not enough going on in terms of the rapport between Tannehill and the receivers. So you can just go down the line, itemize what was wrong with those teams. And getting rid of Joe Philbin is absolutely the best decision this team has made in the past decade. Keith, even more so than getting rid of Cam Cameron.
Oh, wow. That's a bold take.
Those are strong words.
Keith, I totally agree with you.
I'm all about the hot take.
That you are. I will say that you were so, you were running what the heck is his name? The Michigan State tackle. You were on the hype train for that guy, and everyone's like, oh, he's not worth the 1st round pick. Come on. And sure enough, he's been absolutely tremendous this year. So kudos to you for that one. But what was I going to say? Shoot.
Jack Conklin.
Jack Conklin, that's his name.
When it comes to offensive line and wide receiver, those are my best positions. I love how these guys act like they can scout everyone. And typically, I get it right when it comes to receivers, pass catchers, and offensive linemen. Everywhere else, I'd love to tell you I'm good, but I'm lucky. I wanted Xavier Howard. I wanted the Dolphins to draft him. They did. He looks good. He really took it to Brandon Marshall in that meeting the other week, but honestly, that was total luck.
So, Keith, let's stick with him for a second then. He struggled a bit in this game. I'm going to pull up 2 plays on the screen, and I know you didn't join us on video. Maybe next time you can come on that way so you can see the plays that I'm putting up. But I'm going to put up the big 38-yard touchdown that Sammy Watkins had against him, and then I'm going to pull up another play in which Xavier Howard had good coverage on Sammy and forced him inside. But what have you seen of him? Because we've only seen him in very limited time this year. He's had 2 knee procedures this season. And yet, when we've seen him out there, you couldn't really tell that he's had knee procedures. He's been probably one of the better Dolphins corners. He certainly, in my book, has played much better than Tony Lippett has, despite whatever Tony Lippett's interception numbers might be. But what have you seen from him? Why did you like him come out of college? And
Kyle, you're
why
the
do you
biggest
currently
Tony Lippett hater.
I mean, Tony Lippett's just not – I don't think Tony Lippett's that good. Keith, do you think Tony Lippett's good?
I think there's potential there. The only thing that makes me nervous is I think Vance Joseph is doing good work with him, and I wonder if it's something where I don't think Vance Joseph's going to be around that long. I think that he's going to be I don't know that he's going to go this year. I think it'll probably be next year. 2018 is when I think that guy will get a gig. I'm not sure that Tony Lippett continues to develop if Vance Joseph is out of there. But, I mean, I don't know. And you mentioned Tony Lippett pretty much padded his interception count in San Diego because Phillip Rivers just couldn't help but throw him the ball. So, I mean, there's that part. But I think Byron Maxwell got a pick in that game too. So I like to think, well, when Vance Joseph came in, because a lot of people are like, what kind of defensive scheme are these guys going to run? They'd been running a 4-3. The personnel was there, so, I mean, they stuck with it, although I suspect that ultimately this is a team that will use a 3-4. I think they have the guys for it. But, I mean, Vance Joseph wants corners who are going to press. He wants guys who are going to beat up receivers a little bit at the line of scrimmage. And Xavier Howard is a tank. I mean, he's a bigger guy, and I suspect that's why Tony Lippett is playing for them too. I mean, even though he comes in from Michigan State as a receiver, you know, he's got a nice reach to him. I mean, he's a bigger physical guy. So the one term you mentioned, we were talking about Xavier Howard going against Sammy Watkins is you know, rerouting him, getting him, you know, funneling him inside. Some of the instincts in coverage, I think, still need to be developed. I've seen him in plays before where when he's in coverage, he's able to turn his head, find the ball. He looks comfortable doing it. There are other times where I think Buffalo was able to really trip him up, and you saw that one play when he just looked lost and Watkins got right behind him. So typical rookie play. I'm not expecting him to go in there and just absolutely shut it down like a Deion Sanders type. But in terms of what Vance Joseph talked about last spring, in terms of what he was looking for at the corner position, Xavier Howard is a big, thick, tough, fast guy. Yeah. And you know, with considerable upside, you do worry about the nagging injuries that he's had and whatnot. But yeah, everyone was pleased when he went in there, especially because people were worried that Brandon Marshall was going to run amok when Byron Maxwell tweaked his ankle. And there, I think Byron Maxwell, you're kind of seeing the best of what he can do, whereas I think Xavier Howard, you're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, the problem with Xavier Howard, and Kyle will tell you that I scouted him tremendously at Baylor, as I'm a Big 12 guy. He's a limited athlete, and when you put him in position against a guy who's a freakish athlete like Sammy Watkins, I mean, he's right here on this play, you know, a good 8 yards off, and he still doesn't have the speed to make up when Sammy's coming full speed at him. So that's going to be his always biggest downfall, is if he has that really explosive athlete on him, he's always going to lose that matchup if the guy has a running head start. He's got to use his strengths, like you said. He's a bigger guy, you know, maybe press him on the line or using the sidelines to his advantage. But here he has zero chance in this play, Kyle, to make Sammy Watkins just a superior athlete compared to him. And Sammy's is not a small guy. He definitely looks a lot bigger than Xavier Howard.
What's weird about this play, too, is Sammy Watkins is a good almost 15 yards downfield, and at that point, Xavier tries to jam him. That's a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean –
that's just a rookie – the perfect thing, the way to sum it up is that's just when speed catches you by surprise. Because you saw that he's even though if he's able to play off, once you get burned up by that speed, I mean, that's just – then you're just trying to reach for something in that instance, literally too. You mentioned a limited athlete. The funny thing about Miami's corners, none of them are burners.
No.
You know, Byron Maxwell's not a burner. Tony Lippett, I mean, runs well, but I mean, like, he's not a scorching guy either. So, I mean, like, you're not looking at a secondary where I think that those are guys who are all fringe 4.5s, to be completely honest with you.
I mean,
I think Xavier Howard, I think he ran in the 4.4s at the combine. I can't remember his exact time.
4.5 flat.
I'm pulling up his not draftable right now. Got all his combine numbers, about to pull them up on the screen. Yeah, it's not looking pretty, Keith.
No. That's I think he was an unofficial, like a high 4.4, but the official time was a 4.5. Byron Maxwell, I think, is a 4.5 guy. So I mean, you're looking at a team that really wants to beat guys up. But I mean, the funny thing is, go figure, this is the best Miami secondary has looked in years. I mean, that includes the teams where they had Vontae Davis, John Smith, so on and so forth.
Well, that's saying a lot without their best probably defensive back being on the field in Rashard Jones.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I love his game. And here's the most damning thing about Xavier Howard. The 40-yard dash is pretty darn bad. The vertical is horrendous. I mean, his 40-yard dash was officially a 4.58 at the combine, as per mockdraftable.com. Looking at his spider graph right now, you can see it on the screen. Boy, oh boy, is it small. The biggest part of that web is his height and his weight. So, yeah, he's big. But I think, Gary, you said it best, limited athlete. Look at his 3-cone, Joe. 7.18. Boy, oh boy, I bet you that Bill Belichick's draft board, he must have been way, way down, because the New England Patriots highly value guys that can run a good 3-cone drill. His vertical is also really bad, 33 inches. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm also going to pull up the good play that he had. Keith, one thing that you said about him that stood out to me is, he's good when he can, because he's such a big dude, when he can jam a guy at the line of scrimmage. In that play where Sammy had the big touchdown on him, he's playing so far off that he can't do that. And one thing that we continuously bring up on this show, and it's been a whole season-long thing, is Darrelle Revis is so concerned with always getting beat deep that he's constantly been playing off-man coverage this year. But that's never where he's won. He's always won jamming guys off the line of scrimmage. He's never been an off-ball corner. And based on what you said and the fact that you scouted him so much, I sure as heck didn't. Seems to me that the best way that you employ him is right in the receiver's face, and he's going to struggle when he's playing that far off. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I imagine, I'm not looking at that tape right now, but I imagine if he's playing off, then he doesn't have the help over the top. But I agree that, he's a guy who's going to jam. Revis is a guy, that's your game. That's what Vance Joseph talked about he wanted, and that's what this team has done. They want guys who are really going to get in there, funnel guys inside, really beat them up at the line of scrimmage. There's something to that. So, I didn't even get to, because I was out and about listening to the game all day on Saturday, so I didn't get a chance to really catch some of it. But I imagine if he's playing off, I can't think of any other reason for that unless they didn't have help over the top or they had something going on with their safeties. And there's also the factor that there are some times that Vance Joseph has kind of outthought himself a little bit. And a great example of that, I think, would have been against San Francisco when he was zone blitzing with Cameron Wake and dropping him in coverage. And it's just like, he's your best pass rusher. What are you doing? It's clever, but you also don't want to take your. Didn't it work
against the Jets, though? Didn't it work against the Jets?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything. It's I feel like that's, if you're going to get away with it against anyone right now, it's probably going to be, like a Bryce Petty. I think that's a guy you can fool with that.
No, in those games, you could get a little cute against a San Francisco offense or a New York Jets offense. You could get cute on those teams.
I don't know. They got cute against San Francisco, and Colin Kaepernick beat the hell out of them.
Well,
granted, a lot of that was done with his leg.
But I'm saying in Vance, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Vance Joseph was probably thinking, well, geez, they've done nothing all season. Let's try this stuff against these guys. Probably a bad place to do it, but
I don't disagree with you. I think that's probably a great explanation for it, actually.
Well, I appreciate that.
Hey, Keith, I don't want to keep you too long, so we're going to let you get out of here soon, unless you have anything else that you want to talk about with Dolphins. Now, you're a funny guy. You like to do the jokes and stuff. What do you think of Gary's main candidate that he wants to be the next Buffalo Bills head coach? He called him something like Red Cheeks Tom Coughlin before. What do you make of Tom Coughlin potentially being the Buffalo Bills coach? And you know how cold it gets up there, so we're going to see those red cheeks. Do you got any funny jokes for us or anything about the Bills organization? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I don't want to make fun of the Bills organization too much, especially on a day when I'm without being a jerk. I'm pleased that the Dolphins were pretty much the guys who showed Rex Ryan and Rob Ryan the door, because I can't stand those guys, and I hope they were wearing their stupid sweaters when they did it. But at the same time, the Tom Coughlin thing kind of fascinates me, just because he's getting looks from multiple teams. And I mean, you saw it come up where people thought he was gonna, when he stepped down with the Giants, and he was going to become a front office guy and so on. Then that didn't happen, and now I'm hearing Jacksonville's interested in him, which is funny because I mean he was their first coach, and the whole red cheeks thing, which goes back to that game in Lambeau where it was like 300 below zero in that NFC Championship game in January 2008. So I mean that's interesting. I was listening to your guys talk that you were having before I got on the show, and somebody mentioned Kyle Shanahan. I have to imagine he's probably going to be one of the hottest names on the market, and I think that would be a great hire.
The rumors,
because I mean,
the rumors are that he's going to have multiple suitors, and he can basically choose from them. Like that, he's their top candidate, a couple different teams. So as much as I'd like my Jets, I don't even know if we're going to fire Bowles. I seems unlikely, but if we did, that's my number one guy. But I doubt that he'd want to come to our dysfunctional organization.
I like Todd Bowles. I mean, a lot of it comes from the time when he was Miami's interim head coach.
Keith, you haven't watched him enough recently, man. Haven't watched.
Oh, I know. It hasn't gone well. I know. I saw. Well, I mean, I watched the Saturday night game, the Jets and Dolphins, and he's got that 1,000-yard stare going on. I know that look well. I've seen it many times, and usually when that's happening, it's about time to hit the road. So I mean, I don't know. I haven't really. I mean, this is kind of short-sighted on my part, and I mean, really kind of selfish too. But this is like the first year ever where I'm not even looking at head coaching candidates just because Miami finally has one. I mean, whereas
isn't it nice to wear that hat once in a while? You know, Kyle and I last year we were kind of high on Bowles and Rex Ryan. Don't deny it, Kyle. And we were laughing at Joe Philbin in Miami's.
And then Dan Campbell. Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was so funny. Like, oh, let's give Dan Campbell the head coaching. I mean, really? Come on.
Well,
oh my God.
I'm gonna since it's still the holiday spirit, I'm gonna use a line from Home Alone 2. After Macaulay Culkin or Kevin McAllister falls in the ice and Marvin and Harry grab him. My, how the tables have turned.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If you wanna stick with the narrative from that film, I wanted to drop a brick on Joe Philbin's head, multiple bricks. He was terrible. He was a real asshat going for the Dolphins. That guy did absolutely nothing. The team pretty much ran amok, and I guess the millennials call it throwing shade or whatever. But I love the comment Adam Gase had a couple of months ago when they talked about what, the whole demeanor of the team, how they interacted with them, their behavior when he took over. And he said at first he had some guys who were trying to get away with some stuff, and they asked him if that was because they were just trying to take advantage of a rookie head coach. And he was like, no, it's just what was going on here the past few years. So, I mean, there you have it. Check, please. But, I mean, you're seeing Joe Philbin, not to beat up too much on the guy, but I really don't like him, so I will. You're seeing him right now rendering his rare brand of magic out in Indianapolis. I see he almost got Andrew Luck killed already. I see suddenly, and everything I mentioned that was going right with Miami with terms of the offensive line, it's pretty much the polar opposite with Indianapolis right now. And they have some talented players on that offensive line. Costanzo's still a guy I like. I like Newhart too, but I mean, it's just something where and I mean, I think they drafted Kelly out of Alabama as well. So I mean, like they've got guys in there who should be good players at some point, and it's just, I mean, that guy is awful. He has the Midas touch of caca, if you will. So I don't miss him. And I mean, you guys could be right back in it with good coaching. I mean, both teams are talented, and I'm not even like looking at it from an optimistic perspective. I just think like if Miami can find a head coach, I mean, anyone can. It was bad.
Again, Keith, you haven't watched enough of the Jets, man. They're not that talented. Gary, go ahead.
I'm glad Keith held back from how he really feels about Joe Philbin.
He's terrible. Everything about that guy was so bad. And probably I was already an Adam Gase fan. I watched, talking about, I liked him when he was in Denver. I liked him when he was in Chicago. I can't believe Chicago didn't hire him as a head coach. And you should have heard my dad talking about it the other day. He'll never get over it. The fact that they hired John Fox and then installed Adam Gase as their offensive coordinator, whereas they should have just hired Gase and told Fox to beat it. But the first thing Gase did when he went in there was pretty much to say, like, Brent Grimes is out of here. See ya. And take your wife with you. Yeah. Get that. I don't need that in-house. That needs to go elsewhere. And that's something that Joe Philbin was never willing to do. And I think that when you show an unwillingness to stand up for your players to make the right decision, you lose their respect. All of a sudden, you're not a leader of men. You always see people talk about how NFL head coaches need to be leader of men. Well, that's not being a leader of men. That's being a coward. So, I mean, that whole philosophy approach had to go. And then you get Gase in here. He greases Grimes and company right off the bat. I mean, you see, like, he cut a guy during practice. So, I mean, it's not awesome. Fun time in Miami anymore.
That's awesome. No jokes. You know what? In terms of Chicago and their head coaching search, John Fox should have been out of the head coaching running just because of the way he chews gum. That should have automatically disqualified him.
Yeah. He looks ridiculous. I think Deadspin said it. I forget. Somebody said when they hired John Fox that when you want to win games but not too many games, you hire John Fox. He's always got that stupid look on his face on the sideline. And I realize that guy's done good work with linebackers and whatnot. That's where his pedigree lies. But the Bears
hire him as a linebacker coach.
Yeah, I mean, well, there you go. I mean, it's a little bit of a step backward for that guy. But I mean, at that point, I mean, who's to say that it isn't fitting? And I mean, I don't know. Anytime I've ever felt bad about the Dolphins, I just look at the Bears front office because they have those McCaskies running it, and they're terrible. They're, in my opinion, the worst ownership in sports. So,
hey, Keith, you got to go look at the YouTube version of this when you're done. Because we were talking about Home Alone, that prompted me to pull up a picture from my younger brother that he posted on Facebook. The caption of the photo is Harry and Marv out on bail just in time for Christmas. And it's a picture of two construction workers working construction. And they are splitting images of Joe Pesci and what the heck is the other guy's name, Gary? The guy that plays Marv?
Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern. You got to. It's hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing when he showed it to me. Anyway, Keith, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry I was AWOL and I don't have my own show anymore. So this is pretty much my own, my only avenue to get out there and really chat with you guys. So.
Hey, Keith, I'm going to go ahead and say this because one thing about Gary and I is, listen, we say what we believe. And I don't know if Gary's listening to Finsider Radio, but I'm personally not a fan since you've left. I listened to 2 to 3 episodes since you've gone, and I just can't listen to it anymore. And had you still been there, I think I'd still be listening. I'm pretty sure I would be, actually. So just because you're not with the Finsider Radio anymore doesn't mean you can't start up your own show. And we'd like to have you on our show more often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds great.
And you can follow Keith on Twitter at Keef Dolphin. It's Keef, right? Dolfan.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Keith, do you still write for SB Nation?
I don't. I have no affiliation with SB Nation anymore, believe it or not.
Well, then, Keith, you got to make it your duty to come on here more often. Kyle, we can use someone who has more of a positive vibe because, you and I have been doom and gloom since the Bills and the Jets hit midway season this time of year. So,
well, Keith's only positive right now because of where his Dolphins are. I mean,
I get that. Well, that's what I'm saying.
If we spoke to him this time last year, he'd probably be just as depressed. Anyway, Keith, it was really fun.
Yeah, no problem. And I'd be making fun of them if they weren't that good. So it's all about if you can't laugh, what can you do?
That's right.
Absolutely. Take care, Keith.
You too. Bye.
All right. So that was Keith Beebe. He is actually, for the Bills fans out there, he's distant relatives to Don Beebe, the one-time Buffalo Bills wide receiver and special teams ace. Yeah. I remember Chris Kruger actually asking him about that. Maybe he can make an appearance on the Rock Pile Report sometime too and kind of talk about his relationship with them. But anyways.
A special invite to be on the Rock Pile Report.
I mean, we all know that they're all Hollywood now. They're going big time.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gary, so we've given a lot of love to the Dolphins tonight. We've devoted a lot of talk to the Dolphins, which I believe they deserve, to be honest. And quite
Absolutely.
frankly, we shouldn't talk much about the Jets because they just suck. Tear the whole thing down, destroy the whole thing. It's going to be interesting to see where Woody Johnson decides to go. Ultimately, it's his decision. Gary, what do you make of Bills Fanatics BF? They have some inside sources within the Bills organization. They're good buddies of the show. They support you. They support me. They support our buddies at the Rockpile Report. They support Eric Turner. And they're saying, based on who they've spoke to, that Doug Whaley is going to have sole decision of who is going to be the next Bills head coach.
That's how it should have been in the beginning. I mean, Kyle, how many times have I told you I employ people and I like to empower people to do their job? I don't want to be combing over them with a fine-tooth comb. I want to give them the power to do their job to the best of their ability. And, you know, when you have that story that gets leaked out that Russ Brandon told Rex Ryan to buy, you know, Terry Pagua a fine bottle of red wine because he loves red wine, you know, to me that troubles me. I would love for Doug Whaley to do it his way, give him his guy, and see how it works after that.
I'm 100% there. And that's why I'm wondering, you know, like McCagnon and Bowles were kind of forced on one another. So let's say if you do get rid of Bowles, in my opinion, he's definitely the bigger problem than McCagnon, although I don't think McCagnon is infallible as a lot of Jets fans seem to think.
He's terrible.
It should. So, Gary, really quick, do you think who's worse, McCagnon or Bowles?
If I had my hand on the Jets organization right now, I'd get rid of Mike McCagnon. I keep Todd Bowles.
Wow, I didn't think that you
were. I feel like he did him injustice with that roster. And you know what? I would also make the decision I would also tell Todd Bowles, if I was Woody Johnson, you got to find better coordinators as well.
Fair enough. And that's really interesting.
The problem is here, Kyle, that the way they did it ass backwards, like our dad would say, our mom would say. You got to hire the GM first, and the GM has to pick the head coach. And the problem is these guys are married together, and they had no feeling out process. So
part of the problem with that too is when you try to hire both in the same offseason, it's kind of like, what time do you have to do that? Because if you already had the GM in place, you'd have time. You know, basically he'd have several months to kind of research coaches.
Well, that's why I would say you get rid of McCagnon because I don't think he's a good GM, and you get Todd Bowles is that stopgap kind of between the real good pro personnel guy, and then you get that other head coaching candidate. I still think Todd Bowles. I don't think he's a good head coach, Kyle, but I still think that he's football savvy, that he could make it work. I'm not saying you're going to have much success with him, but I believe Mike McCagnon's a cancer.
In terms of schematics, there's much worse than you could do than Todd Bowles. I just don't know in terms of a whole operation of a system that he's the right guy. But anyway, let's continue with the theme of the Bills, Gary. And they decided to go with E.J. Manuel, as Drew and Chris mentioned earlier when they were on. And it's not because they think E.J. is better than Tyrod, but mostly because it's a business decision. I think it's, $30 million become fully guaranteed to Tyrod if he sustains an injury. That's a big old risk for a quarterback that he did miss some time last year. He likes to scramble around a lot. He's not the biggest athlete in the world. It's not crazy to think that he could get hurt. And in basically a meaningless game, I mean, the Bills had a chance last week. They had won last week. You know, they still have a distant shot at the playoffs. Now they have absolutely no shot. They've been mathematically eliminated. Really, there's no reason to play. In my mind, it's the right decision because you can still keep Tyrod. Just because you're benching him in this game doesn't mean you're moving on from him. You still have a couple months to make that decision. So in my mind, it's totally the right thing that they are doing here. Absolutely.
And I agree. And you know what? I was kind of shocked because you get the little text message on your phone saying, Bills decide to bench Tyrod. I'm like, okay, in favor of Cardell Jones, right? Now it's E.J. Manuel. So I wanted to see what Cardell had, but I get why they would do it for E.J. And Kyle, here's another thing. Wouldn't you like the next head coach to decide whether Tyrod should stick or not. I mean, yeah, you got to bite some money, but still, I would still like to keep Tyrod for the next guy, to see if he could work with him. And bring in another, and you'd have to bring in another veteran, to pin him up against.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem with that is if you bring in another veteran, it's like you're going to have a lot of money tied down to the quarterback position, and you should really only have that much money invested in one guy.
Now, the only guy returning is Cardell Jones. If you get rid of Tyrod, EJ, he's a street free agent.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you meant have Tyrod and another veteran. I get what you're saying now.
No, I am saying you'd have to keep Tyrod, take the option. And you'd have to bring in someone else too, Kyle. You can't just go into the season with Cardell Jones and Tyrod Taylor.
Now, when you say another veteran, like what are you talking about? Are you talking about like Cutler or Glennon? Like who are you talking about here?
I'm not talking. Well, someone of that nature. I'm not saying you'd have to go out. You could get. Obviously, there's guys out there, but I think Glennon might demand some money. I don't know why. It seems like he's all of a sudden. His name has been brought up where he's one of the top offseason quarterbacks now coming in. I mean, that's how desperate teams are. I'd have to see that play out. Teams are going to release players. We'd have to know, but you got to bring in someone who's a veteran, without a doubt.
Yeah, reports are saying that Glennon can get like $15 million a year. He could get like a Brock Osweiler type of contract.
I have no doubt he will. No doubt he will.
Because when you think about it, it's really not that crazy to think about. I mean, Brock Osweiler started 7 games in his entire career. Mike Glennon in that first season, I'm pretty sure he started over 7 games. So they pretty much were just a season. If you look at them pre-draft, I mean, Glennon probably had a better collegiate career than Osweiler. Both of them have like a similar stature and nature. They're both tall, lanky guys. One was drafted in the 2nd round. One was drafted in the 3rd round. And you could argue in terms of a number perspective that Glennon actually had better numbers and he was working with much less. Osweiler was throwing to Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, whereas who was Glennon throwing to his rookie year? So you could say that Glennon had better numbers working with less than Osweiler, so it's not crazy to think that he could get that same type of contract. And supposedly, Tampa Bay thinks highly enough of him that they weren't willing to trade him for like a 3rd, 2nd round pick. They wanted like a 1st round pick or whatever. So, it makes you wonder like how many teams were willing to actually give up draft capital for this guy if it was a little bit lower and still give him a contract. So I think he's going to get something like that. And our buddy Chris, who was on before, he was saying that he would take both Cutler and Glennon before he would take Tyrod, which is just absolutely –
oh, God.
It's just so stupid.
These guys have been the biggest haters. I mean, you could look at that Miami game. He can throw the ball, Kyle. It's not – it obviously helps if he has a really good running game, which they do. But people are making such a big deal about his lack of throwing. This team is scoring a ton of points. I mean, they're putting up historical numbers on offense in the Bills organization that they've never done before. And a lot has to do with Tyrod Taylor. People are saying, the argument, it's LaShawn McCoy. Kyle, I posed this question to you last week. Would LaShawn McCoy have all those touchdowns, all those yards, and would his offense have, 27-plus touchdowns now if it weren't for Tyrod Taylor? If he wasn't there, would they have all this success?
Absolutely not. And I'm about to pull up a play on my screen in which Tyrod, I was just going through my film review of Week 9 at Seattle, and Tyrod, he scores on an option play. But Gary, this guy, he makes it much easier to run the football, whether it's him doing it or whether him holding a linebacker so that linebacker can't crash down. The guy brings another element to your offense. And let me just say this too. He is a flawed quarterback. He's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that he doesn't throw over the middle of the field, that is a real thing. I'm not going to sit here and say Tyrod Taylor is, he's a can't-miss quarterback, and I'm not going to, be his hype man. No. But I do like him. And you can win with him. He's not going to destroy your team. And give kudos to our Dolphins contributor, Travis Wingfield, because Travis Wingfield is of the opinion that quarterbacks are overrated, and what they do to a team, whether or not a team is successful or not, the quarterback, probably gets a little bit too much credit. And I completely agree with Travis in that regard. But Tyrod is not going to be that guy who's going to lose you games. And if the rest of your team is good enough around you, I think you could. I think an organization could win a Super Bowl with this guy. When you talk about, look at what Russell Wilson did a couple years ago. Was Russell Wilson good? Was he phenomenal during that playoff run? No, he had a couple really bad games that Super Bowl year. And now he had a couple amazing games too, but make no bones about it. The Seahawks won that Super Bowl on their defense and their running game. And part of the reason their running game was so good too is because Russell Wilson could move with his legs. So I don't think that Tyrod is on Russell Wilson's level. No, I don't. But I still think that you could win a Super Bowl with this guy if the rest of the team was good enough around him and the coaching was good enough. Because coaching, I hope this episode is doing it justice when we've been talking about with Adam Gase versus Joe Philbin. Coaching is so important. If you get the right coach, you get the right team around, I think a team could win a Super Bowl with Tyrod Taylor. I cannot say the same for guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. And you know what? It boils down to who's going to be the head coach coming in and what players are they going to bring around him. And I believe if Doug Whaley has – Kyle, I'm a big Doug Whaley fan. I think he's the best GM we've had in a long time, And I could honestly say that he brings in the right guys. Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm more optimistic than pessimistic at this time.
I hear you. And here's the play I'm talking about, Gary, right here. I mean, so right here, this is an option play, and the linebacker is locked on Tyrod. Well, he does bite a little bit on Felton, which is kind of stupid, but he also has his eyes on Tyrod the entire time, and he reacts to him very quickly when he sees that Tyrod pulls the ball. But it just doesn't matter because Tyrod is just too damn fast.
Right.
And as a defense, it puts you in a really tough spot because you need as much guys as you can flying to the football. Just think about this game against Miami this past week, where Travis Wingfield, when he was on before, he said that Miami ran it right to the spot that was vacated because Buffalo only had 10 guys on the field. Every guy matters, and you need every single guy flying to the football. Whether you have 7 or 8 guys in the box, there's a big difference between 7 or 8. So as a defense, if you can't have this linebacker crash down on who the running back is going to be, if it's going to be Shady, well, that makes a big difference for Shady. It makes things much, much easier for Shady. But then if you have Tyrod who can pull the ball, it just puts you in a really, really tough spot as a defense. And that's why Rex liked him so much, because Rex always looked at it from the defensive perspective. It's hard to defend that.
Yeah. And by the way, I love Travis Wingfield. He's one of our favorite guests, and he's someone I would definitely crack a beer with. But I don't know what he's talking about, that Kyle Williams. I always pay close attention to number 95. And he was actually whooping tail. He was probably the only guy on that defense whooping tail.
I personally haven't watched the all-22 of that game yet, so I can't comment.
Unbiased opinion, Kyle, and you will see for yourself. And Kyle, there's never had been a game where you have to question number 95.
Absolutely not. He's just always been an awesome player. And Drew mentioned this on the Rockpile Report a couple weeks back, or it was actually last episode. Jerry Sullivan of, I believe, the Buffalo News, or correct me, I don't know if that's the news outlet that he writes for. He wrote a piece about Kyle Williams and how, he's never been to the playoffs. And, when Drew was talking about it last week, it said that Drew basically said that he almost wanted to cry because of the amount of effort that Kyle Williams gives on a weekly basis. Yeah. But yet he still has no playoffs. And here's another play of Tyrod. I mean, Tyrod, this is maybe his best game of the season, or if not his best, definitely one of his best games of the season. And, I mean, here's the thing. Again, he's not throwing down the middle of the field. He's throwing to the sideline, but he's got pressure right basically from all angles. He doesn't rely on making plays like this. He's not a guy that looks to leave the pocket. But boy, oh boy, can he leave the pocket. And when he does, beware. Because he's not looking to run, Gary. He's not looking to Michael Vick it. Michael Vick right here, he would just scramble for maybe 10, 15 yards. Tyrod has his eyes downfield looking to throw, and this throw is on a rope to Robert Woods right down the sideline, completion.
Absolutely. And these are the type of plays that you can't get from, I would say, 98% of the quarterbacks in the league, you know?
You can't. There's no doubt about it. And
Kyle, let's face it. Tyrod, we mentioned this program. He's not a complete product. In fact, he's the most sacked quarterback currently in the NFL. But a lot to do with his own doing because he waits so long to get the ball down the field, you know. And this offensive line, let's face it, they're also better designed for the run than they are for pass blocking. But with that being said, he still is a good enough quarterback to make stuff happen. And Kyle, a lot has to also do with it. Who has been playing at wide receiver this whole season? Yeah, he's finally got Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins both down the field healthy, but he's only had them for the last 3 weeks together. So, you know, it's been a tough road for Tyrod Taylor on a lot of fronts. His offensive line is not the best pass blocking offensive line. They're very good run blocking offensive line, and the stats prove that. His wide receivers, especially his main weapon, Sammy Watkins, though healthy right now, is still not fully healthy. We can both attest to that. He's still not 100%. Robert Woods has been dinged up all year. You know, there's so many factors in why the reason that Tyrod Taylor did not have a successful season. And he's still putting up decent numbers, Kyle. He's not killing in the passing yards, but touchdowns, you know, running the ball. He's the number one rushing quarterback. He's still a highly productive quarterback. You know, PFF got him ranked as the number 19 or 20 quarterback right now. Well, guess what? That's where he's going to get paid as if they keep him next year. So,
yeah. And, you know, what's interesting is another big criticism of Tyrod was, well, he's not going to bring you back. He can't throw his way back into a game. If you get down by multiple scores, he's not going to bring you back. He's never done it. He's never thrown for 300 yards. And this was his first 300-yard game in his career this past week against the Dolphins. And Chris Kruger was saying, hey, listen, it took him overtime to get it. But did he not bring Buffalo back to win that game? The defense blew that game. The defense blew that game all game. The poor tackling on numerous occasions, letting Jay Ajayi run for 57 yards with 10 guys on the field. There was multiple reasons why the Bills won that game. But in crunch time, Gary, on fourth down, 7 yards away from the goal line, Tyrod Taylor, what did he do? He threw over the middle of the field. He utilized Charles Clay. So don't tell me that he can't do it. I know that he doesn't do it with consistency. I mean, Gary, to that point about Tyrod throwing over the middle of the field, I recently just finished the Seahawks game. I was watching it last night, the All-22. And this is 48 seconds left to go in the first half. And as far as I can remember, and I was watching the game very closely, this is the first time in the game. It took till basically halftime that Tyrod finally threw over the middle of the field. It's not his strength. He doesn't throw with anticipation. Maybe it's because this is probably the biggest reason why he doesn't have the interception numbers, Gary, because, you know, he doesn't want to throw over the middle of the field, which is where most interceptions come. And he has to kind of see it before he throws it. He doesn't throw it with anticipation. So, yes, he is flawed, but I don't want to say that he can't do it.
Like I said, you could do much worse at quarterback. And I do believe that Tyrod can get you a championship. You need a lot around him, just like a Ryan Tannehill. Just like I still believe in a quarterback like a Phil Rivers, Kyle. You need a lot around him to win a championship. So that's not a bad thing to say that you need a lot around him. Eli Manning needs a lot around him to win 2 Super Bowls. Let's face it. There are very few Tom Brady's. I believe Ben Roethlisberger is a guy who kind of improvised with talent around him. Aaron Rodgers is another one. But really, Kyle, when it comes down to it, majority of quarterbacks are in that Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Tannehill, Andy Dalton, even Philip Rivers boat, where you just need a lot of things around him to make it happen. But and also another thing, Kyle, is you bring up that he doesn't throw in the middle. He also doesn't lose you the game too. He doesn't go out there and get 3-4 turnovers. A lot of these quarterbacks that I mentioned do a game. You know, yeah, you'd like to see him be maybe more of a risk taker, but still at the same token, if the Bills lose a game, it usually doesn't have to go – it's usually not on Tyrod Taylor's shoulders.
I would say it's almost never. It's usually when the defense plays bad. And when we look at during that middle stretch of this season, Gary, that Bills defense was playing very well. But Gary, again, I would say that they've been more disappointing than the offense yet again, which is more reason why I didn't know where you were going to stand on the whole fire Rex Ryan thing, and I didn't think he was going to be fired until after this week, Gary. So I kind of like wasn't prepared for all that, but I was going to be saying, listen, I think you guys really do need to move on from Rex Ryan, because basically he took a very, very good defense and made them average. Yeah. And the offense has been better both seasons under his tenure, that's never been a thing for Rex. Even in Rex's worst seasons as a Jets head coach, the defense was still better. Not the case this year.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if Rex Ryan will get a defensive coordinator job somewhere. I believe he still is one of the better defensive coordinators in the league, Kyle, and especially when he has to just focus on that. But does a team, does an organization want the circus that is the drama storm that is Rex Ryan? That is the question. And, I can tell you this right now, Bills fans are tired of it,
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like, Kyle, when we hired him, it felt like we had to answer for all his things he said in New York. And a lot of Bills fans were just saying, well, let's see what he does in Buffalo. Like, that was our whole thing that we kept saying. But it still felt like
you were one of those people saying that.
Well, I was like, hey, listen, let's see what he does in Buffalo. Let's not talk about what he did at the Jets, because Kyle, we've seen it time in and time out. How many coaches actually work out in their second place too? We could point at Bill Belichick, we could point at Pete Carroll, but let's just take Jets history and recent Jets memory history. Coaches like Eric Mangini goes to Cleveland, he's out in 2 years. Herm Edwards, he's in Kansas City, he's out in 2 years. Even Bill Parcells had a short stint with the Cowboys, and now Rex Ryan falls under that same umbrella. So it's and John Fox looks like the same thing is going to happen to him in Chicago. There's a lot of Lovie Smith in Tampa Bay. I like a veteran head coach, but there's not a lot of good history behind it. You could point at Pete Carroll, you could point at Bill Belichick, but it worries me. I want Coughlin, but I just don't. I don't know who else is out there, Kyle. I don't want Kyle Shanahan like you like.
It's so interesting how the narrative can change, because, what I remember from a lot of people in previous years was everyone was like, oh, you got to get the next young, hot offensive or defensive coordinator. Don't try to get someone else's damaged, used goods. Get the young guy. But now it seems, because people are looking at Belichick, because people are looking at Pete Carroll, because people are looking at other veteran coaches that have been successful in a second stop, and the rate of failure with so much of these offensive and defensive coordinators that haven't had any coaching experience, it seems that most people now, especially with Jets fans, they want a veteran guy. I'm seeing Todd Haley as a common name. I'm seeing guys such as Jim Schwartz being thrown out there. Guys who were big failures as head coaches. Josh McDaniels, he's another one. Even though I kind of like the McDaniels, I know we disagree about that, but it's interesting how it can change. And
I don't think Josh would ever go to the Jets, though.
I don't think so either.
But either way, step number one for you guys is Todd Bowles has to be shown the doors before we can even talk about this. Kyle, this offseason is going to be very interesting. And here's another thing that we're not mentioning in this show, and we failed to mention this this whole show, is what about Anthony Lynn, Kyle?
He's certainly. Listen, he's been getting head coaching interviews for maybe 3 seasons now. Now, granted, that's probably because of the Rooney Rule and because he's African American, why he's gotten some of those interviews. But I always thought it was interesting that a running backs coach would get head coaching interviews. It's rare that we see a position coach get that big of a promotion. But he's not just a position coach anymore. He's basically had a full season as offensive coordinator and did an admirable job without even being able to install his offense in the offseason. So I think he has to be a candidate. I think he does.
I don't think Bills fans would be upset if they found out Anthony Lynn was the head coach. I don't think so, Kyle. And just to talk more about Anthony Lynn is one thing when we hired Rex Ryan, Kyle, a good friend of mine, and he's also someone who talks to you on a regular at the gym, Viet Vo. his first thing he said is, "You're going to love Anthony Lynn as a coach." And I can tell you this right now, the Bills' offense, for whatever reason, has been very good. I would even venture to say even was better than what Greg Roman produced last season. So maybe you like to see one more year of Tyrod with Anthony Lynn. I don't know. But all I can say is that the Bills, Terry, Doug, Kim, Brandon, whoever, it would be a fool not to strongly consider Anthony Lynn as the head coach.
Yeah, he should definitely be in the running, in my
And
opinion.
I can tell you this right now. If he's not, best damn believe he's going to get a lot of interviews.
Gary, one more point about Tyrod, and then I'll move on and completely go away from him. So one thing that I've been trying to look for when watching him is this whole notion of throwing over the middle of the field. The stats definitely back that up. The eye test backs that up. But let's look at it from a little bit of closer angle. Here he's throwing over the middle of the field, but this is late in the game, or this might have been in a 2-minute drive. I don't exactly recall. The Seahawks were giving up a lot of stuff over the middle because they wanted to, I guess, let the clock turn. But look how much time Tyrod hesitates here. He's not throwing with that anticipation that you like. I get the sense that the only time he throws over the middle is when it's wide open. And we look at Robert Woods right here, he's wide open over the middle. It's not a tight window. I get the sense that the only time Tyrod wants to do that is when it's wide open over the middle. Would you agree?
Well, I mean, just by looking at this play, I think that he looks at LaShawn McCoy first, and he moves right as progression to Robert Woods, and LaShawn's on his butt, Kyle, right here when he looks for him, So I think this may not be the best example.
I think I might have one more too.
All right,
but, Gary, we've also spoken about the Patriots, not so much in this episode. I want to keep the show right around 2 hours for the sake of time. So anything you want to say about New England before we get into our picks?
New England, Dallas, Super Bowl this year. That's it.
New England, Dallas for the Super Bowl. Now, Gary, if the Seahawks still had Earl Thomas, would you think maybe Seattle could potentially get in instead of Dallas?
I still think Dallas is the more well-oiled machine as of right now.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm going to agree with you. I definitely think that New England is in the Super Bowl. The NFC I'm a little bit more unsure of. It's hard for me to think that the magic, so to speak, that Dallas is doing right now with a rookie quarterback.
I will say this right here, Kyle, real quick before you finish your point. That New England is a tougher time with Pittsburgh and Kansas City being in the playoffs.
Okay. Pittsburgh is getting scary now, Gary. The defense is finally starting to play. Le'Veon Bell is really heating up. I mean, he didn't look like he was much at the beginning of the season, and that looks like that's probably going to be Miami's first-round matchup in the playoffs, and it's not going to be in Miami this time. This time it'll be in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has been much better at home this year than on the road.
And here's another thing, Kyle. Is real quick, I want you to finish your point, too. Is Kansas City, I've been hearing Dad's mouth all season about Tyreek Hill. I made the mistake of calling Tyreek Hill a gimmick player, which I still believe he is. I still think he's a complete wide receiver. But every time he scores a touchdown, and it's been often, hasn't been few and far between, I get a phone call, Dad Sell. The gimmick player, huh? Every single time he scores, Kyle. And I wish I never said that because of that reason alone.
Travis Wingfield is also a big fan of Tyreek Hill, and I keep getting on Travis about his Jakeem Grant take, how Jakeem Grant was going to have 550 receiving yards and a couple receiving touchdowns this year. And remember, we got on him the first time he came on, and he's like, he was supposed to be what Tyreek Hill is right now. So,
you know what? Tyreek's got a lot more wiggle than Jakeem Grant does, and he's a lot bigger too.
Jakeem Grant, for as small as he is, I tell you what, he does run hard, but it's he's very fast, but sometimes I feel like it's very uncontrolled. Tyreek Hill has probably got more balance. Now, Gary, here's the last screenshot of Tyrod that we're going to pull up. Now, Gary, here he drops back, and again, he throws over the middle of the field, but it is wide open. Seattle is leaving it open on purpose. But, Gary, you still see that hesitation from Tyrod. He's not throwing it with anticipation. He still has to – he kind of like clutches a little bit, like he kind of wants to throw, you can see, but he waits on it a little bit before he delivers it. He's not doing the Peyton Manning where it's just immediately he's throwing it with anticipation.
Yeah, Kyle, here's another interesting point because I was talking to a Bills fan that lives around the area. He was also telling me that because of last year, I mean, let's face it, Kyle, Tyrod and the Bills had one of the best downfield passing games that we've seen. Kind of remind me of Eric Coryell back in the 80s. That seems to be his bread and butter, and it seems like he's so comfortable with taking the ball deep every time. That's always his first read. And to get him out of that mold of not telling him, hey, listen, don't chuck it down the field always. I mean, even this play, he looks to the sideline. I don't know who the wide receiver is on the left, but that's his first read right there, Kyle. It's just to go down the field and try to go for the deep bomb. So maybe it's something that's ingrained in him, embedded in him, that look for the touchdown every single play.
He probably also knows that he's really good at doing that.
I get that, but unfortunately, we haven't had the ponies to run that type of offense this season.
I think another thing, too, is when you throw and he's got a tremendous touch on his downfield passes. When you throw a bomb downfield, it doesn't need to have a lot of velocity on it. Just look at Colin Kaepernick. He's not good at throwing those types of passes because everything he throws is a freaking 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Now, Tyrod Taylor at the Combine, I mentioned this before when what is it? One of the scouting services, I'm forgetting exactly who it is. Dan Shanka is the guy, whatever organization he works for. They use a gun to measure quarterbacks' velocity. It's basically their strongest throw from the opposite hash at the Combine. That's what they mark down as their QB velocity. Tyrod Taylor had only 50 miles an hour. Now, that's extremely, extremely low. Like Bryce Petty was 53. That's considered very low. Hackenberg was like 56. Paxton Lynch is considered high. He had like 59. I can pull up those numbers sometime. But Tyrod had 50. And I wonder, like, when you throw over the middle of the field, that is one time where you need to have a laser. You need to have a very fast ball. And when you look at Tyrod's passes, they don't look like very slow, like 50 miles an hour. Like, I never really got the sense of, man, this guy's got no velocity on his throws. But he definitely doesn't throw it in there tremendously quick either. So I wonder if he knows, like, what his skill set is and that he doesn't have enough juice to put it on like that. He likes to throw it with more touch. That maybe that's also a reason why he doesn't throw over the middle more. Interesting take. I mean, would know the limitations better than the guy who's throwing the ball. So everything's going good. But I can say, Kyle, this Miami game showed me a lot from Tyrod, and he's shown signs of improvement. The Seattle game you mentioned is a good focal point, and this Miami game is another one. It is there. It's not like he can't do it. Is he comfortable with it? Is it how is the offense designed where maybe that's not his first read, or maybe that's not even his second or third read? So there's a lot of factors into it. Yeah. Okay, let's get into our picks now. And sorry, New England Patriots fans that listen. I know that you don't listen to the show solely for our Patriots information and takes. You listen to it because you care about the AFC East in general. I know we didn't talk about you a lot this week, but there's reasoning behind that. And don't feel the need to worry because you guys are very likely going to have a deep postseason run. And when those shows happen, you best believe that we're going to talk about the Patriots more so than any other AFC East team. So let's go to the first matchup, Gary, which means a little bit less because both teams are out of the playoffs. This is none other than your Bills at my Jets. Who wins this game and why? I thought you were going to grace us with the honors of doing that first. Kyle, as bad and as disappointing the Bills have looked, this is a tryout for Anthony Lynn. And Anthony Lynn knows that maybe a good performance with him seals his fate as not only getting a head coaching job with maybe the Buffalo Bills, but another team. So I believe he's going to show off. I do believe that they're going to listen to what the players have said as far as simplifying the defense. I think they're going to play very base, and especially if Bryce Petty's in there. And I do see the Bills winning this one. And I think it's going to be a dreadful game to watch.
But the Jets have just not shown me a whole lot the last couple of weeks as far as what they're able to do. And like I said, they've played 3 to 4 games where they've scored 3 or less points. So.
And they've had a couple games where it's 6 points. They had 6 points against the Rams at home. They had 10 points at home against the Colts. Colts certainly aren't a good defense. The Jets are just a mess, man. And you have to believe that people don't believe in Fitz anymore. So Fitz is starting. I mean, it probably would be worse if Hackenberg was in there. But it's just not pretty. I like the Bills in this game. Even though it's E.J. Manuel, you have to wonder, how is he even better? Is he better than Ryan Fitzpatrick?
He might be. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe he'll be in a Jets uniform next season.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, though, sometimes when people make a coaching change. We've never seen Rex Ryan get fired in season. Even when he was fired with the Jets, that came after his last game in which he beat the Miami Dolphins. So, in the Bills, they loved Rex, and Rex has always been known as a player's coach. We see this often with franchises that when they fire their head coach, usually the players rally. Like that happened with Jacksonville. They fired Bradley, and they went out and they dominated, and they won with their new head coach, Doug Marrone. Would the Bills do that? They probably like Anthony Lynn, but, will they be sad that Rex Ryan's going? Seems like Marcel Darius isn't going to mind based on his comments. But other guys like Lorenzo Alexander, what he did for his career, Kyle Williams said that he's a big Rex guy. It just makes you wonder. So anyway, I still like the Bills in this game. I just think that they're the better team all around, better special teams, better defense, certainly a better offense, better running game. Sammy seems to be healthy based on last game. Nobody can cover him. I'm going to go with the Bills. I'm going to say the Bills put up – I'm not going to say as high a score because EJ's out there, but I'll say 24 Bills and I'll say 13 Jets.
Yeah, it's going to be a miserable game to watch. And Kyle, how many seats do you think are going to be filled up in the stadium?
It's going to be a lot like those games that we used to go to back in the day when we were in high school, Gary. Those dreadful week 16, week 17 Jets-Bills games when they're both out of the playoffs.
You get coerce the guy with a bucket of fried chicken to get tickets.
You absolutely could. I mean, shoot, we were getting tickets we were getting $40 worth, and we were getting like 5 tickets for like $40 or something like that.
Yeah, a bunch of high school kids finagling adults.
And literally, we got there so late too. It's just like you could get there that late, and people were so desperate to get those tickets offhand that they were just literally willing to give it up for a bucket of chicken, just like you said. So, and anyway, we got another Week 17 matchup in Miami. New England traveling down to Miami. I have a feeling it's going to be a bit of a different tone this time. Last time, the Patriots ran the ball, 23 straight times or whatever? Not a recipe, especially when you're the Patriots and you know that passing the ball is the way that you win. Not exactly a strategy to win. And they asked Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick got grumpy. He got angry. They asked him, Bill, are you going to bench your starters? He's like, I don't even know what you mean by that. He's like, it's not like a preseason game where you got 75 guys on the roster where you can rest a whole bunch of people and put in a bunch of backups. He's like, we can only deactivate 7 guys. Now, Bill's probably being a little bit disingenuous there because, yes, you can only deactivate 7 guys, but you can still have, guys like Vincent Valentine playing major reps instead of Alan Branch playing major reps. You can have Jimmy Garoppolo playing. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be active on game day no matter what because you need a backup for Brady. You can have him starting instead of Brady. You can have guys like, Malcolm Mitchell playing pretty much every snap and guys like Michael Floyd playing pretty much every snap instead of guys like Edelman. Martellus Bennett, you could sit him out for, some of these other guys. Langle, that guy who just caught the touchdown this past week against the Jets. So that's going to be the interesting question. The Patriots, now they still do need to win or they need Oakland to lose for them to lock up the 1 seed. So they do have something to play for. And obviously getting that 1 seed was tremendous last year. If they had that, I keep saying this all the time, that game was played in New England versus Denver, I think the Patriots would have went to the Super Bowl. I don't think Bill wants to make the same mistake again this year. I think they're going to be aggressive. They might bench some players. Brady might only play the half, but I still think they're going to be very aggressive. I don't think that they're going to do something so stupid like running the ball 23 straight times. So I like I actually like the Patriots in this one because I don't think the Dolphins are going to improve their playoff seeding all that much. So I think that they might be a little conservative as well. And I'm going to pick the Patriots in this one by the score of 20-13. That defense has been playing pretty good right now. Matt Moore's at quarterback, so I don't see the Dolphins scoring a lot. But either way, it doesn't really matter for each of these teams. They're still in the playoffs, and both of them still have a shot at the Super Bowl.
That's right. And I agree with you, Kyle. I think that you're going to look at two different teams. You're going to look at a team that is looking to rest their players, especially playing a long overtime game, and a team that knows how detrimental that resting their stars, what happened last season. Especially, I believe that momentum is a real thing, Kyle. And I truly believe that New England is not going to make the same mistake twice. Bill Belichick is not that head coach. And I'm saying it's going to be 31-17.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the show. And I did see that there was a couple callers on the line that we didn't get to. I did tweet out. I know that not a vast majority of our listeners don't follow us on Twitter. But if you follow me on Twitter, that's usually where you'll get a lot of the updates for the show. And you could still view my Twitter profile even if you don't have your own Twitter profile. But I did tweet out that the phone lines would be closed tonight because we were going to have 3 guests on and because the show is going to be a lot shorter than it was the previous couple weeks. But anyway, that's the best place to go for updates. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at AFC East Bros. Gary is AFC_EastBro Gary. The show's on iTunes, Stitcher. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you could write us a 5-star rate and review on iTunes, that would be highly appreciated. Kyle and Gary, and we're signing off. We'll see you next time.